Welcome to another episode of the Four Horsemen here on Last Free Nation. As usual, I am joined by my co-horsemen, Thorin and Richard Lewis, and our guest horseman, Kassad. So I am being 3v1'd by Counter-Strike OGs, and I will very nicely attempt to rein them in as they go into the rage of what has happened with the Blast Major.
By the way, just as a quick aside, Monty, before you start, I saw some people, because Richard did a hint as to who the guest is, some people were speculating, oh, is it Maui? Look, I know Maui will have an edgy take, but he would, listen, he might have learned a little bit from Thorin on this one. You don't trash the major you're going to work the day before you get there. Like, I had to learn the hard way, but I don't think it was ever going to be Maui. I'm just going to put that out there. It was always going to be Kassad.
And have you seen the state of Paris?
Exactly.
And as we say, you know, the theme is fitting right now because we are about to coronate the last king of CSGO, and that is, you know, uniquely corresponding to the coronation of the current king. But much like the current coronation, perhaps we would like to remember it in a different way. And in an earlier era, it may have been a little bit more magisterial and sparkling than it is right now. It seems like an apt time to discuss this. Now, for those of you who are unaware, as many of you are watching the Four Horsemen who come from other games, what has happened is we are in the last major for CSGO. So earlier this year, there was an announcement of the new game of Counter-Strike, which is kind of a graphical update with some gameplay changes, but on the whole, still the same game that people know and love for the last 2 decades. And this version, Counter-Strike 2, will be coming out, as I understand it, later this year, which means that there will be no second major, as there typically is in the fall. And the next major has been announced for March of 2024. Now, this means that
run by PGL, by the way.
Run by PGL next year. So this means that Blast was kind of, I think, unexpectedly going to host the last CSGO major, which is, to be fair, I'm going to start this off, to be fair to Blast, maybe not something that they knew or signed up for. And so perhaps the pomp and ceremony that people expected as we send off the current iteration of Counter-Strike, which has been now played professionally for over 10 years, may not have been exactly the plan. And yet,
well, actually, can Richard answer that? Because obviously Richard is the person who broke the story of CS2. Like, would you, if you know this, like people got this major last year. Normally you book the city and the venue where, would you speculate that Blast probably had no clue this was the last one?
Oh, no clue whatsoever. I mean, CS2 was like very hotly under wraps, which is why everyone flipped their shit when I broke the story that it was coming. And even industry people and professional players, and you know, they were all saying, no, you're absolutely wrong on this. You've just fucked your entire career. You're going to be wrong. You're going to be made a fool of.
I mean, we all knew it was coming. It was just a matter of when.
Yeah. I mean, obviously, well, but also there was no idea it was going to be CS2. We just knew there was maybe going to be an update to Global Offensive, a new version of Counter-Strike, something coming down the pipe. We didn't know. So, yeah, I don't think Blast knew whatsoever. And honestly, the thing that's annoyed me in general about Blast is down the years, they've constantly flexed about how they want to do a major. Like, we'd love to do one, guys. We'd love to do one, even though everyone in the industry knows that's just not the case. Like, they didn't pitch. So how badly do you want to do it? And then obviously they've managed, thanks to Macron and the French government. I'm almost certain there's some sort of subsidy involved. I would bet my left nut on that one. Now they've been able to turn around and do this whole fucking, you know, French major, which is like far outside of their wheelhouse. Their events in Denmark are immaculate, by the way, and have been every time they've done one. I mean, even the events they've done in like Abu Dhabi, you can't legislate for there being no crowd, but the events have all gone super smooth. The RMRs and everything in the run-up to this major have been awful because it's just the scale, and I've got genuine fears that we'll talk about in a bit about, you know, how well this major is going to be handled, even from a broadcast perspective. But yeah, certainly I don't think Blast knew they were signing up for what was going to be a historic moment with additional focus.
And by the way, just before you explain the rest of the story, Mike, like the key thing here, the reason that's also very, very relevant, what Richard just said about the history of Blast there, is like, I'll give people a bit of trivia as the esports historian. Everyone remembers that Neom deal thing where a bunch of the talent said, we won't work with you if you work with Neom. Blast themselves said that was like basically their best ever partnership or like sponsorship offer, and they had to turn it down because they were strong-armed by the talent, some of whom literally then worked for a company owned by the same people, because that's CSGO talent, as you'll discover on this episode. episode. But basically, that implies, guess what? If you don't take your best ever sponsorship partnership, you are not going to be in great financial straits. Also, as Richard said, it was always flexed like, essentially, it's almost like we'd do a great job if we had a major. Yeah. But don't tell anyone, we definitely can't afford to run one. It would be death to our company if we did. We're actually struggling to do 8-team tournaments in our home country just to battle ESL. So to me, it was always sus of like, wait, they got a major in the end. And as you said there, by the way, that's why PGL, fair play, I've absolutely dicked them going, well, our major in CS2 is in Denmark. Like, because the joke is Blast probably couldn't run a major just there. I agree with Richard. I'm almost certain some finagling's gone on. And the reason I bring this up is because I actually think a lot of what people have seen about things like the talent and the way some of the things that might be going on at the major, it's not all just people being idiots. I think some of it is cost cutting, not having the budget for it, having to do weird things behind the scenes, battling ESL. Like, it's one of those topics where I feel like there's a lot of like rabbit holes you can go down, you know.
There's a lot of nuance to this as well, like you're saying, Thorin, because, you know, obviously, like from running Flashpoint, I'm aware of the logistics surrounding, you know, running a major, because that was conversations that we clearly had at one point in time too, just out of curiosity. And to let people know, it is immensely expensive to run a major, and oftentimes companies have done it at a loss. You have to be very, you know, calculated with how you deal with a project that big. And the other thing is that, especially in the current economy and conditions in esports, it's gotten even harder than it used to be as well. And you also have to remember that Blast is currently, they were in a competition with ESL previously, and that was when ESL was kind of tight for cash and a publicly traded company. Ever since they were purchased by the Saudi Sovereign Wealth Fund, they are now in competition with an entity that has, you know, combined with Faceit. So they're even bigger than they were before, because now they're effectively Flashpoint and ESL in one entity and have hosted multiple majors. And they're not super concerned with the amount of money that they're spending because they are trying to consolidate market share. And in fact,
you meant Faceit and ESL, but yeah, I know what you mean. Yes.
Yeah, Faceit and ESL. But, you know, they're not super, you know, Faceit and ESL are not super concerned with the amount of money that they're spending. So it's a really formidable opponent that Blast is going up against in the space right now. And as sponsorship money has dried up, as venture capital has dried up and investment has dried up, you know, it wouldn't be surprising if, now that Esports Engine has been acquired by ESL, if Blast was an eventual target for acquisition also. Like, there's a world where later this year we see an announcement that Blast has also been purchased. So I think
all the rival buys them, you know, the Qataris buy them instead of someone else. It just feels inevitable though. Yeah.
I think it's about to happen, to be honest.
Yeah.
I think it's going to happen sooner rather than later. The thing is, like, and when it comes to this major, I don't even know why people are making it to be like supposed to be some sort of a epic event. Like, it's not like we are just, you know, saying goodbye to Counter-Strike and just leaving it forever. It's just a little bit upgraded the game, that's all. Like, do you remember the last big event in 1.6?
I mean, I do, but that's just me. I mean, you've asked the wrong person there.
Nine out of 10 people will say no.
So, yeah, and he was a historian. Do you remember Esports history in intimate detail?
It's all good. It's all good.
The thing is, like, why do we need like to be such a great, like, magnificent event? But on top of that, Blast has no business doing this event.
The joke is that speech he just gave there is what Blast told all the talent. They were like, look, there's a lot of drama about this being like the last event for CSGO or something, but why is it even a big deal? Why does it have to be a big event or something? You know, anyway, here's your $50.
Let's start with the talent announcement, because I think that is kind of the biggest bone to pick that people have had publicly, which, again, we don't know when these talent contracts were signed. These deals could have been done. Well, you guys might know. I don't know. Let's put it that way. I don't know when these talent contracts were signed. This could have been done prior to the announcement of, you know, it being the last major. Kassad is shaking his head. It was apparently very not fun at that time.
Very recently, yeah.
Yes.
Pretty recently. All right. Yeah. So perhaps that they knew.
Usually it's like a month before the tournament, Monty.
So what to put this in perspective for people, why people are frustrated, and we have to go through this piece by piece.
By the way, props to whoever made the order of the announcement, though, because it's like they were setting up like a story, because the way they sort of built to a climax, you thought you'd seen the reveal, but you hadn't. And then they kept revealing, and then at the end, they just ended on the like, It's like that's like throwing the fag end right in the like fucking the gas tank at the end and walking away. It was amazing. So well done.
So what happened is that they have. It's not that they haven't hired a bunch of tier 1 talent. They have. But they have hired what would effectively be called blast loyalists, who are the people that operate their circuit. It's casters that they're very close to, which is fine. But I think what's been noticeable is that some of the biggest names in the history of Counter-Strike as a game have been left off this roster. And even if they were just to make guest appearances within the broadcast or be included, it would feel much more like a celebration of the history of CSGO. And some of these names that I could bring up off the top of my head, like most notably who are active right now, are like Yanko, who wasn't involved, who's been one of the greatest analysts in broadcast history in CSGO. We don't have Stunna involved, who's been very active recently. There's no Shocks. She's at MSI. It's a little bit different.
We'll get into some of that later. I've got some interesting stuff on that. But it's all good.
You know, Shocks is kind of newer to Counter-Strike, but even very historic people like James Bardolph, you know, are not. Thorin, maybe.
I guess you were going to forget it.
Kassad.
I've donated those motherfuckers. You know?
maybe some of the people here on this call. You guys can say whether you even had conversations with them or not about this. But even like, and I know Sadikist has had some troubles recently, but obviously he's been a big part of CSGO history.
He ain't coming back.
Yeah, I'm sure Henry G, who has announced that he's coming back, is also not at this event. So there's a lot of names. Point is, like, DDK, I recognize is off in Valorant right now, but there's another name that
new sheriff in town now,
appearance.
I like how he's like saying like, you know, people who are not there, and he's treading lightly. He's not saying other people who are there. Yeah. They're not supposed to be there.
By the way, the funny
people who are not there supposed to be there as well. So
one really silly detail of this.
Very nice person.
One of the biggest ironies of all, Monty, is the actual #1 most hated talent announcement for a major ever was PGL Stockholm. And the joke is, if you actually were to run it back, that's the talent lineup you would do if this was the last ever CSGO major. Like, it's actually the irony is incredible. Whereas all the other things, why don't you hire new people we don't know? So they did it, and then as usual, you can never win. You can never win.
No, you can't win. And you know, there are a finite number of people, but I do think that some more thought probably could have gone into this from the Blast side about making this a send-off. And even if you're not necessarily like, you know, if you have a limited budget, even getting people just on stage for a short amount of time, like, I think people in the space have enough passion that people probably would have been willing to go to Paris just for a day or two for the finals, just to do like a send off at a lower rate, because we all care, you know, you guys care about the game. So I think there are ways to do it that wouldn't have cost like a lot of money, that would have made this event feel better for the fans in the community.
Man, it's not the budget. Like, it's not. It is not the budget. It's like, it's like a very known thing that Blast is avoiding to hire like ESL people.
Yep,
has been like that for years now. They hired Chad and Machine just because they're the best casting duo. If they don't have to hire them, they wouldn't hire them because they're associated with ESL. I'll tell you this thing.
Also similar, by the way.
I can't say the name, but close colleague of mine. So he went to this far. Close colleague of mine and yours got a deal from a certain sponsor to do a content piece that's going to be aired on the major, and he was denied that deal just because he's affiliated too much with the competitive, you know, with the other company.
Yeah,
so it went that far, man.
Yeah, that was the thing. I'm kind of working on a report at the moment, funnily enough, which that element of it is a component that basically it's unequivocal. Like, so again, for context, everybody said when we do the majors, politics has to go out the window. You just hire the best people for the best show. Major is Valve's tournament, and they bestow the blessing of you, the TO, to run it. That probably a loss, but you know, That's it. That's what you get. So it's technically Valve's tournament, even though Valve's very hands-off historically, and they don't tell you, like, oh, you got to fucking hire this guy, hire that guy. It's your show, but it's Valve's tournament. And so historically, we've done this. Like, me and Duncan took a stand to get Janko on E-League. They didn't like him. They said he sounded too much like Ivan Drago, and they didn't think he'd go over well with Americans because Americans are idiots and they don't like accents, apparently. That's the thing. Like, they put fucking subtitles on Guardian who speaks fluent English on E-League, and I flip my shit about it because I think it's insulting. But whatever. Janko should have been there because he was the motherfucking best analyst at the time. He was elite level analyst, and he deserved to be at the major. And so, we've historically kicked up a stink. And say what you will about ESL, generally ESL are better at that than all these pretenders to ESL's throne. Remember, face it, 2018 London, all the bullshit there where Bardolph didn't want to hire Sponge. Didn't want him there. He's Mr. ESL. He's an ESL shill. He can't be there. So now Blast are doing it worse than even Face It ever did, worse than ESL ever did. And specifically, I'll get into this. They have deliberately made their broadcast worse just because they don't want to make ESL's talent better. Yes. So get this. They were going to break apart Machine and Sponge. They didn't want them to cast together. They were at first they floated the idea. Wouldn't it be good if you saw other people make it a bit more? Then it became
that's a Riot move right there.
Yeah, exactly. Stop me if you've heard this one, Riot talent, right? Over in Valorant, this is just another day. They're going, what's wrong with this, right? But then it was a request, and then obviously those boys aren't gonna fucking do that, right? Like, why would you? Why would you do it? That's like some D-man level shit, inserting himself into Anderson Semler and all that stuff. Not literally, I mean, just in the broadcast, But anyway, Jesus, look, we've all had a drink. It's the coronation party, Monty. But anyway, then on top of that, they're fucking saying Harry and Hugo, they don't want him to do stadiums. That's where Harry and Hugo shine. In fact, I would argue the last two majors, the best casts in Rio and Antwerp were probably done by Harry and Hugo, right? Which isn't to denigrate anyone else's work. It's just the way it goes sometimes. The energy's right, the teams are right, the game's exciting. They've certainly been blessed with great games and a great atmosphere, but part of that is the cast. And so they're not going to go to the stadium. They're not going to go to the later stages because they're ESL. Then, I don't even know what's going on about Janko being left out of the analysis desk. Him and Maniac are the best analyst partnership we've got. I don't get me wrong, love everyone else's work. Not Professor, we'll get to that. But, Maniac and Janko is a must for the final. And he's not even going to be there because he's ESL. Stunner. Right, at the end of the day, give Freya a rest. I'm happy with the tech girl hiring. I think Sam's great. Known her a long time. But, you can make the argument she shouldn't go straight to a major based on her limited CS experience. I won't ignore that. Right? But I think she'll knock it out the park, by the way. I think she'll surprise everybody, but that's an argument you could make. Meanwhile, Stunner's
and it's also just the tradition in our game. Like, we made Freya work years and years so she could get the big events. Yeah. It's not even like we're making these rules up on the fly. This was just the way it was done in our industry.
And we're generally better, by the way, than a lot of other esports. Yes. We just want you to pay your dues. It's like wrestling, you work your way up and then you get the belt. That's it. Again, also the wrestling belt, not the horrible belt off your dad or whatever.
Sounds dark.
So anyway, just to put a pin in all of this, that's what they've been doing to the talent. They don't want their show to be like an ESL show, and they think that goes so far as to be not hiring the talent. Meanwhile, over at the other end at ESL, and a lot of people probably don't know this is going to be in the report as well, ESL are now revising the way they do their contracts, and they're getting into this realm of having a stipulation, a clause in their talent contracts saying you cannot provide similar services for other tournament operators to the one you provide for ESL if it stipulates so in the contract. And so people are going to have to make a choice very soon about who they're loyal to, where their bread is buttered. And it's sad because it's like now Launders and Scrawny, they might only get 20% of the calendar when they're certainly good enough to do all the big events. It's a stupid, needless political battleground. And if you want to do it for your regular broadcast, I guess fine. Be pathetic, be children. You do you, okay? But this is a fucking major. It's not about you. It's certainly not about using a major as a conduit to advertise your fucking streaming service, which is another thing I'm going to talk about. But they've not put politics to one side because they can't handle the fact that ESL have won the race to become the -- tournament operator in CSGO.
It's just a pissing contest right now. And it started with with Blast. Because ESL was hiring Pimp, ESL was hiring Scrawny, Launders, all these people, right? They were there.
Yep.
And then all of a sudden you have Blast thinking they're some sort of I don't even know what they think about themselves. But they don't invite Yanko, they don't invite Trace, Stana. And it's just coming into that talent announcement, it's just unbelievable what they're doing with their broadcast. And it's just like you said, I can understand it if you want to do it between the Blast, fall groups, fall finals, whatever the fuck banana cups you run there. And then you shouldn't be doing it in a major event. Okay, I'm not for hyping this last major because whatever, right? But if you want to do it, then hire the best talent. And they didn't hire the ESL talent, but at the same time they did by getting Chad and Machine,
and
right?
Like you say, Kassad, they only did that because they knew that with every member of talent they leave out, they assess, this is how cynical it is, they assess what is the level of public criticism going to be. And that's it, right? That's the metric as to whether or not you work a major. How many Reddit threads will there be? How many HLTV threads will there be? How many tweets will there be if you're not hired? That's no way to be even thinking about a broadcast.
And I'm telling you also, if Monte, you said a little bit about the budget, right? And I'm telling you, if they went to Yanko and Stana and said listen, it's a little bit tight right now because we have all these things. Can you give us a 20, 25, 30% discount just for this thing? They would say yes, just because they want to be a part of the thing.
That's also, by the way, a time-honored tradition. There's nearly always on every major talent list one guy at the end who you don't know is happy to be there, and he does take €500 a day. That's happened many times in the past. We're just not going to say who it was.
Yeah, no, but also not only that, right? We've done this, right? Say what you will about the fucking old boys club, and as I've said, the idea that me, Duncan, we were part of some old boys club in CSGO when we were the fucking iconoclasts that actually shook up the fucking old boys club. We were all told we weren't good enough to be on a broadcast. We were all told we'd never be hired. We were the ones that were held to the impossibly high behavioral standards, while other pieces of shit got to act like divas behind the scene, right? Whereas we used to muck in. One of the things we famously did in 2015 to help Moses get a bump up and do a major, we all agreed we went to DreamHack for Collusion of Poker, and we said we want to have the greatest talent pool assembled, right? That's probably ever been done at a major, certainly to that point. We're willing to take pay cuts to get X, Y, and Z on the broadcast. What can we go to? Where can we draw the line? And people fucking said, I'll take less because it's Jason's time.
Yes.
Now, so Blast know all of this. They've been in the scene a long time. So some of the people who run Blast are OGs. They know all these stories. They know this. They simply don't want to do these things. They simply don't want to have those people there. It ain't about money. It ain't about nothing. It's about trying to say a fuck you to ESL. And it is pathetic. It is pathetic to do this for a major. I don't care which company you are. It's a major. It's a celebration of Counter-Strike. You hire the best people.
Well, especially
this
one, right?
Yeah,
especially
and this one because of all the other associations, whether they're fair to exist or not, because I kind of agree with Kassad. I think people have made this a much bigger deal in their minds than it probably actually is. And I imagine when CS2 does arrive, in a few months, people are going to be, oh, is that it, right? But whatever. Technically, this is the last CSGO major, and people want it to be a send-off to a game that's been a big part of their lives for 10 years. And they want their favourite people on the show, and they want the show to be good. I mean, it's not to be disparaging about anyone else, but, I'll just say this because I've already said it. I've already done my fucking breathless assessment of the talent hires on my stream. Professor being there at a major over Yanko is a disgrace. It's a disgrace. And it's not because Professor's like, I don't know. I mean, he's all right on a podcast, but it isn't the same thing. I want to know what his chops are. I want to know what his fucking credentials are, right? Like, people used to say, Thorin can't be an analyst. Well, why the fuck can this motherfucker, right? So it makes no sense to me. But then you start looking at how, oh, yeah, but he is on that HLTV podcast. And, oh, yeah, that episode of that HLTV podcast will be an extra element at this big tournament where they'll do it live, and that'll add value for the attendees. And also, we sort of do rely on HLTV to do all this content and all the stats that
conflation's bad, isn't it?
Yeah, and it's like, look, I know in esports journalism, it's very hard to keep church and state separate, a lot more than many other industries. But we're starting to get I can't believe Professor is there for any other reason than he works at HLTV. That seems to be the exact metric as to why he was hired, and it's nothing personal. But never in a million years would I hire that guy for my desk. Never, ever, never. I could name 10 better candidates. I would go and get players before I went and got that guy. There's 50 players that could do a better job. So I don't know why Blast hiring him. It's like a final slap in the face for Janko. It's like, you're too ESL. Now look at your fucking replacement with the backhand. I'd be furious. I would put it this way: if Blast ever came to me, Cap and Ant, to do an event on short notice, how I would fucking relish it. I'd have him over a barrel. It's a joke.
It's also, I mean, the unfortunate paradox of both sports and esports is that when you get to the biggest events, right, which are going to be the highest level of gameplay, oftentimes it's also the most generic audience, which means that you can't necessarily do the most in-depth analysis because it's going to go over a lot of people's heads. But I think what's so wonderful about Janko as a personality is even me, I've watched a ton of Counter-Strike in my life, but I'm by no means an expert. His telestrations, I think, are accessible for absolutely anyone, and that he's incredible at both explaining the nuance to high-level people as well as making it comprehensible for absolutely anybody in the audience. And that is an especially valuable skill at a tournament like this, where you're going to have a broader audience. Some people are great at explaining the depth of a strategy, but it requires a baseline of knowledge. And I think Janko is just incredibly accessible as a desk personality, as an analyst. And I will miss that, for one.
I've got a couple of things to say on the Professor one. So one is that this is also a mad one where I actually thought everyone would be coming down on this guy like they did on Tech Girl and be like, why is he doing the major? Because if people don't know, this guy isn't even a CSGO analyst. One, he literally does not have a page on Liquipedia. Do you understand this, guys? There are nobodies that have pages on there, because if you've done a bunch of events, you get added to the thing and eventually you have a page. He does not have one. He did once work another event. He did Katowice last year as one of the early on people. But here's what's different. One, that was not a major. And two, that was actually semi-appropriate. I wouldn't hire him, but that is how you use them. You bring them on early on, you bed them in a little bit with some games that aren't such a big deal. You give them a chance to sink or swim, and you're getting them experience. You see if you like them or not. By the way, spoiler, wasn't hired for the other events after that, as far as I know. And now, bizarrely, out of nowhere, like Richard says, almost seemingly only to fuck with Janko. This is basically, the analogy is, this is Caligula making his horse a general, and we must all salute the horse in order to be part of the Roman Empire. Yeah. It is a humiliation ritual, because that's the dumbest part about this. When idiots do what Richard said, they go, but HLTV has been a big part of it. He is not HLTV. He is a man from Croatia who works for HLTV. He's not. In fact, if someone said, who is Professor, the first thing you would say is, he works for HLTV. That is the defining characteristic of his career in Counter-Strike. Now, if I said Richard Lewis or Thorin, would you go, they work for Desert? No, we are our own identity first. In fact, when we work for a site, that's the scoop, that they got us. They actually got the gig. Wow, they got us to work for them. Also, he's not even someone who presents as a fucking analyst. He's basically a host of a podcast where he, in a very mild-mannered way, day interviews Sponge, who himself doesn't even give his real fucking takes anymore. That's right, homie. I've been in green rooms, mate. You don't think those things. And they do the most softball interviews ever of players, which is why every player just says yes instantly, because it ain't fucking 60 minutes. You are going on to a late night talk show to do canned material on topics you like and never talk about anything controversial. Even on the show, he is the least one that does the analysis. It would go Sponge primarily, a bit of Striker just because he's such a moron, he doesn't know when he's talking out of his arse, and then Professor, if anything, just adds a bit here and there. He hosts the show, and he's actually, by the way, one of the more likable ones of the two that aren't Sponge, basically. So the idea, he's not even someone who does, as far as I know, he doesn't do any like YouTube channel of analysis. He's not some Mahone character breaking down demos. I don't even think on HLTV.org, the website, he's ever done analytical articles. I don't know in any context why he's an analyst. Like, that ain't even hate to him. Then I'll just throw in the obvious thing I will mention. Every fucking time his name ever comes out in public, this is someone who did what I consider one of the cardinal sins in esports journalism, which is you're salty that you're not in journalism, Richard Lewis or Thorin. But even worse, you're not all the things they are outside of journalism. And there's this weird entitlement that acts like what me and Richard did is we were journalists, and like this, we were just hired for no reason to be analysts. No, on the side, we have had like 3 or 4 simultaneous careers: content creator, journalist, analyst, in Richard's case, host as well, a whole bunch of other things. And we've built those into their own legitimate vehicles separately and earned our way every step of the way. And that's why we get to do all these things. One of the areas you'll notice in CSGO, the young journalists always fucking step on the rake that goes in their face by thinking they can just pop off on Twitter and be a big figure and be a guy with a polemical take on something they know. They don't know that's a story where we know the person involved. We've done the research. We're not just having a fucking talking. I'm Stephen A. Smith and I think LeBron is, but we're not doing that. We actually are embedded in the scene. They think because we did it, they can sort of cargo cult their own way in. So as a result, this guy, because he was salty about us doing Flashpoint, and can you believe this, Monty, that I would dare, as someone doing Flashpoint, to critique my main rival, ESL, when I know behind the scenes they are fucking everyone. Why would I do that? What an insanely corrupt thing to do. So because they were mad, me and Monty, as a meme, showed screenshots of one match. We did it as an obvious fucking joke. There was one match in Flashpoint 1 where MIBR was playing, so they had loads of viewership, and ESL's was like some dog shit match of like, you know, some NA team, like fucking Cooper's team or someone versus nobody. And so obviously that had fuck all viewership. So as a meme, we showed a screenshot that showed on Twitch there was more viewership. Now, 1, that was for the live match, you fucking cocksucker. But 2, what these people did is because they decided, because they're not journalists, they are fucking media manipulators, they don't have journalistic ethics, therefore they are not worthy of the title. They decided that they would actually take it as we were bragging in an unfair way. By the way, it's a fact the numbers were higher, but they were actually, we were making this up. And so they concocted a story where they went and noticed that when the Flashpoint stream wasn't live, they would show, as in with a game actually happening, they would show reruns, just as ESL has done forever. They would do reruns of the game. So if you didn't watch, you could watch the live one and get some later viewership. Now, because Faceit was the operator of Flashpoint, Faceit would put on their Faceit website that you go to play matchmaking gathers, they would have an embed of the stream, which I have no say over and never decided this. It is just standard practice in the fucking industry and always will be, because you'd be a moron not to do it. It auto plays when you open the site, which, by the way, it isn't 2008, you fucking morons. Those sites know how to track that. If you're on for 1 second and you click off, it's not like that's one view and now I get millions of dollars. They already know that all that shit's not even what they pretended. But because the rerun of this was playing on this website, it was artificially making a rerun of a match, might even have been a MIBR match, have like viewership it shouldn't have. But when you watched, the reason it looked like, well, this is fake, is because no one was commenting in the Twitch chat. So obviously was just people going on to Faceit and then sort of going, oh, I don't want that, actually, it's like mute that or whatever, and just playing Faceit, right? Here's the reason why I bring this up. 1, a journalist presented this as though it was some alien concept that me and Monty had concocted to viewbot. They were using the word viewbot, by the way. Oh, don't worry. It's like Ryan at Push V and them were all over this shit as well. Everyone who knows nothing about journalism has to pick the wrong side when I have all the facts on my side. I've noticed that. So they just all waded in and said that we were viewbotting the stream. They tried to imply, including a certain cunt guy who's just a shit influencer who will never have his real name out there, and he doesn't matter as a result. I have my real name on the internet. I'm doing it all behind my own name. They all implied that was all of the real Flashpoint views. They were all view-botted. There never was anyone watching Flashpoint. Now, he did this, Professor. He wrote this rival. By the way, he works for HLTV.org, didn't write an article, didn't do an expose, didn't find out all the information. And if this was real, by the way, if we were view-botting, that's like the esports equivalent of Pulitzer Prize-winning shit, you fucking moron. That's where you do the story that exposes the corruption. You'd have fucking put a spear in our side if there was no story, is the point. Because here's the part he didn't mention. They used the lie of omission. They set it up as though, what's going on? When it is literally standard practice. And are you ready for the punchline, guys? The next 2 years later, he worked for ESL at IEM Katowice. ESL has always, and at that time, done the same thing. I'll guess face it, copied it off them, where they would do reruns of their stream on ESEA, their service at the time. By the way, irony of irony, face it's now part of ESL. But let's rewind. He worked for ESL. He has never mentioned ESL doing that. He then worked for them, accepted money from them, and has never mentioned that piece of context. Right? One, you are a journalist when you do that. Fuck off out the scene. You're just LARPing. You're a little dickhead. You're just another Jay Clucky who we'll get to soon. Then two, like the idea that you're going to be that fucking petty. Like, in that scenario, I'm sorry, I interpret that one way. You saw me, a fellow journalist, who maybe you think you're as good as you, and you thought, oh, is he living his dream? Is he getting to do what I wish I could do, run a tournament organizer with millions of dollars? Well, I won't let that stand. Let me find any reason to rabble-rouse the crowd against these people and to sow discontent that they're scum. They're not even doing this, Monty, to save... By the way, I only did Flashpoint to save Counter-Strike. The money wasn't even that great. I was only there to stop what is happening in this show, to stop ESL hegemony, to stop, by the way, ESL being able to wake up and go, has my league got all the best, not got all the best teams in it? Well, no, boss, because it's a qualification league. Take away their spots then. Give them to bigger teams. Invite them straight up to the Premier League. By the way, essentially, you idiots, ESL almost did a fucking Super League with that Pro League. They just went, oh, sorry, you like Swole Patrol who earned a spot. You're out because I'm going to put my mate in. You're in the fucking league now. So they did all this corrupt shit. And these people tried to turn the crowd against us and make that project fail. And then work for our fucking rival. By the way, spoiler, that's the whole talent with Blast again, innit? But so to me, I'll always bring that up, by the way, because these are things you did publicly. These are things you put your name behind. These are things you did with intention behind them. So like in this scenario, and then, by the way, you're then going to go and become part of the talent crew. Part of our sacred brotherhood where we all keep things private in green rooms. There's another thing I'll throw out there right now. I would never, if I attended an event one of these fucks was hired for, say a single word in that green room. I don't want everyone in the world to know. That trust of that room would be violated completely. I'll even say this. I might not like people like Frankie. They don't go and fucking derail all the arguments or talks we have in private. They know that that's fucking the locker room and you never let it get out. So actually, people will think the Professor one's a minor deal. It isn't. Like I say, I think that actually is like one of the worst ones because everything associated is with like, has anyone figured out yet what is an upside to this? What's a selling point? What's a redeeming quality as to why this will be great? As far as I can tell, the best thing about Professor is he's fairly sort of milquetoast. You know, it's just sort of a bit bland. He's not offensive. That's about it. Isn't that the best selling point at the moment? And he's followed CS a long time. I'll give him that, of course.
Well, the thing is, like, nobody of this, like, people will just say anything that might rile up the fucking people around him. Like, actually saying the truth, right? If you say the truth, then all of a sudden you just get villainized. You know, if you say the things as they are, you need to like be pandering to these like TOs and shit. Like, fuck that. You know, and I agree. Like, the thing is, like, what gets me the most is, like, I know Prof. I know him for a long time. He's Croatia, super close. We know each other for a long time. The thing is, like, he's not an analyst, right? He's not an analyst. Like,
does he even pretend? Has he ever claimed it? I don't think he's ever pretended to be an expert. Isn't he like a fan of the game who does some journalism? As far as I know, that's who he is, right?
For me, that is Blast picking up a pile of shit and throwing it at Yanko's face. Just straight up like that.
It's the way he went from like, look, he's from Korea. I know him. It's like he's getting a piece of shit and just putting it in, and he would be the shit. It's like, I love Kassad, man. I just fucking love him. He's so blunt, isn't he? But by the way, speaking of blunts, I will just say, after how hot and under, you know, fucking irritated and all fucking bothered I am after that, it reminds me of when I would smoke cannabis using a traditional bong. Whereas what I wish I could do right now, when there's enough hours I could go and do it, is go and take my freeze pipe, food safe glycerin chamber and and put it into the freezer section. This show's going to be going an hour or two more. It only takes a mere hour, which is about the time I tune out of each HLT confirmed episode. So then, it's just wanted to stop talking then. So then, basically, when you take it out, the reason why I would do this is it would cool the cannabis smoke by over 300 degrees, making it much more of a smooth experience. Unlike if some, say, awkward Croatian guy who'd never done a major was just thrown in the deep end like, swim, motherfucker, swim. In fact, this is an international swimming competition. There's Michael Phelps. Here we go. So basically, if you want to enjoy cannabis products and turn your cannabis smoky experience into a cannabis smoky experience, you can use the code LFN for 10% off at thefreezepipe.com. That's how you sell out, Professor, you fucking daft cunt.
All right. So, I mean, it sounds like there are some very legitimate concerns about the professor being there, given his lack of experience at the major. And some people, I want to go back to the tech girl thing, because even though she's been very poised, at least in the stuff that she's done, it seems like this major in particular, and any major, is not the first time that it shouldn't be your first rodeo within the world of Counter-Strike. That's totally reasonable, by the way, in any game.
I will say she did do the RMR for the last major, but just she's never worked like, a Kelowna or an ESL. She never worked like the ones that you would normally do the step up along the way.
She's done about 10 live events in CS. I think they've all just been
small ones. Like I think she did that one in like Dubai last year, that like heroic one or some shit, if you know what I mean. Smaller ones. And also I will say, just if you're a CS fan, she's not just some nobody. She's not done loads of other games like PUBG and all that stuff. It's a bit like Frankie. When she came along, you're initially going to be like, who the fuck's it? They're mega experienced, mate. Like, long as they get their legs under them, they'll be good. I'm telling you.
And also as well, I mean, just the one thing I will say is right now as well is like there isn't an abundance of desk hosts right now.
Yes.
That's the one machine transitioned.
Everyone's nobody wants that role. Right, like it feels great at first because you introduce the show, you're on the desk, you're there all day. You don't get a lot of airtime. The best hosts very quickly realize the less talking you do, the better. And all you're really doing is directing traffic. You have to really want to do that. You have to appreciate
those days are very long too. If you're hosting,
exactly.
they're really long days.
The E-League hosting was an absolute killer for me because I would be in before the rest of the talent. Then we would I'd do a meeting with the crew. Then we'd do a talent meeting where I would also be at. Then I'd have to go off and shoot some fucking bits and pieces, pre-rolls, do some reads for, when we went to commercial breaks, like E-League will be back, right? All that bullshit. And then obviously as well, on their day off, I had to go in and record all the syndicated stuff because we used to do like an hour-long condensed highlight package of the day's the week's action, and I'd have to go and fucking record that on a Sunday. So it was hard.
Like, at most esports events too, you basically are the segment producer too. So you're the one who is talking to your analysts to get their points. You are working with production and structuring it, while the matches are going on. So it is a lot of work.
Richard, unironically, used to know all of the actual behind the cameras people by name and have like relationship. Like the joke is, this is not even a joke. We would walk in and be like, "All right, Bill, how's the kids? What's going on the way?" And then the guy afterwards, because awkwardly, I'm like with Richard. Like then the guy sort of turned to me, and I was obviously like, "Look, it's in my contract. You can't even look me in the eye. Fuck you." And I would go, "Yes," because we're just different people. That's all. We're just different people.
The thing is, like with the host role, it's so
almost a joke there.
So difficult, right? You have to talk. I remember when I started and, producer is saying something while I'm talking at the same time. Like I'm trying to make a point and he's like, yeah, keep it short because we have an interview, just whatever. And I forget what I was trying to say.
Yeah, I mean, listen.
And also you're like talking to production while the analysts are talking and you're off camera because you're trying to set up the next segment, but you have to listen to your producer, tell them the information and listen to the guy so you could respond to your analyst all at the same time. It's tough, man. It's tough.
Yeah, I mean, I used to tell production like, don't get in the analyst's ears, get in mine, and I'll get in theirs. Like do it like that. But
I used to I was like at the beginning. For me, it was like I had this happening to me, and just every single producer that was like, please, like when I'm talking, just nothing in my ear. I will forward around the show, and it will be fine. Just make sure you don't talk to me in my headsets, so I don't like fuck up the thought and fuck up the point, and it just turns to shit. But the thing is, like Tech Girl is like she's in the role, right?
Yeah.
She does that. She has experience, and you can make a point like, okay, we wanted to try give her a chance, for the future, whatever, right? And that's a valid point. And I think you said it, Richard. That I'm pretty sure she's gonna do fine, right? So
100%.
And also you had I think there is another one. I think Veracity, Jasmine, right? I think that's
the one who
that's
did
her name.
Claude and that, yeah.
Yeah, she did Rio. You know, I
Yep.
worked the desk with her, and she's like fine as well. You know, it's just there are people that that can be there. They had two hosts. They had Tech Girl and Freya, right? And they're supposed to work both streams every day, and it's just fucking stupid.
It's tough. It's tough. Look, one thing I want to talk about as well, because I don't want the whole show to just be banging on the talent announcement. We got two other, but in my mind,
there's still a big one coming. Though, right?
We haven't gotten.
There's still one more coming, right?
I'm leading us into that one, guys.
That's the one I want to talk about.
Go on then.
And that is, I want to talk about the passion of the Dinko. I want to talk about the passion of the Dinko. Right now, he's got the crucifix. Everyone's flogging him. It's a nightmare. Right. So, for those who don't know, if you've not been paying attention, Dinko is a young commentator. He's been on the come up for a while. Definitely paid his dues. He started doing a lot of events. Big events. He's been working with elite level casters now, like got a partnership. He had a partnership with Henry, and then he was in a partnership with Moses. And it's like, okay, so what a Blast do? Again, I can only assume because they don't want to develop talent on behalf of ESL, where he'll do primarily most of his work. They move him to an interviewer. And it's doubly egregious because not only is he not an interviewer, and I can't think of any point in his career where he's done live, like sideline interviewing until Blast have determined that he should be doing that. He also, there was a Reddit thread already crucifying him, saying, he's got no empathy, right? Now, what happened? Because Reddit's just a collection of people who don't actually, they're just out of their minds. Like, it is just a fucking, like, asylum forum. Like, there's no sense being talked there. So, first of all, the Reddit thread title was called Magic's Crying After Going 0-3 at RMR. They just lost to Astralis, enough to make anyone cry, but he wasn't crying. It was an out-and-out lie in the title. Mods just let it stand, whatever. So Dinko goes to ask him a question. He's been told, get down there, we're doing a losers interview. Now, obviously, already esports fans are just plebs. So they think players shouldn't do, it's an anime, and fucking, your feelings are sacrosanct, and you shouldn't have to do loser interviews, whereas loser interviews are the norm in every single fucking sport.
No, they even do it in the UFC when you just got your ass beaten knocked out.
Exactly. Like, you're just there with a
exactly.
You just had your brain fucking
So what do you think went wrong? What would you have changed?
I don't know.
Exactly.
Like the end of Rocky, you know what I mean? So anyway, losers interviews are just normal, but apparently in esports we have to fucking protect fees. So Dinko went up, right, and he knew Magic. You could tell from his face he was pissed off. You would be. So Dinko tried to set it up and said, look, mate, I know it's a tough one. Loads of tournaments left in the year, plenty to play for. I just wanted to get a temperature check on how you're feeling. And then Magic's, being a little petulant cunt, just went, it sucks. So Dinko gets the mic back and he goes, yeah, obviously, I get that, but there's looking forward, there's things to look forward to, other tournaments, getting back on the road, Counter-Strike 2's round the corner. It wasn't even a question. It was more like a statement, like say something to the fans, And fucking Magic's just goes, yeah, I guess. And he goes, I can see emotions are high. That was the interview, right? Nothing wrong with that, except Magic's being a prick. Which, by the way, if I'm his team manager, I pull his card over that, because that's your chance to say something to the fans. Like, your fans who've just watched you go 0-3 and lose to Astralis, who wanted you to be at the major, and you're so fucking narcissistic, you can't even spit out a platitude to say, we let the fans down, we're super sorry, we're going to come back, we're better than this, blah, blah. And you're not even going to just go through the fucking cycle that all professional players in every other sport just has a bunch of generic answers programmed into their brains, so when they're emotional they can just get through it, right? So no. But anyway, what was Reddit's response? Fuck Dinko, apparently. Fuck Dinko for having no empathy, even though 50% of the 2 questions he asked were just constructed with pure empathy. If anything, the question sounded awkward because he was front loading them with too much empathy. Well, I would have just been like, that was fucking shit, you silly twat. And then I would have made him do a press conference with the word losers press conference above his head, because fuck their feelings. the media machine. It gets viral moments, which encourages sponsors. And when you refuse to engage with it as a player, you're ripping off everyone else in the ecosystem by diminishing the broadcast. Yeah, but you get your 50 grand a month, I suppose. So fuck everyone else. But anyway, for Blast to then double down after seeing that Reddit thread and putting Dinko back out there, so now Moses and Anders have to form a partnership, which, I mean, they're pros. It would never creep into it. But remember, that is a partnership that is already separated. Anders is now paired up with Henry G, and Moses has made it clear Dinko is the one going forward. So Dinko should have said no to this, but who's going to say no to a major, especially for a young lad, you know, who's building up his career? But what Blast have done there is a disgrace. Taking good talent, established talent now, and throwing them into an unfamiliar role just because of some ideas you've got about ESL. So I really feel for Dinko, and I hope the community aren't going to be too down on him, but I know they will, because they're scum. So, you know.
By the way, I also do love how fucking egregious that is, that's the way that they invited Anders and fucking Moses as well. Like, oh, hey, Brad Pitt, look, good news. We've got another like headline movie for you. You're the romantic lead in a true love story about how love will always endure. The actress, of course, Jennifer Aniston. Yeah, you know her, right? So you two will be fine working together, and a lot of it's going to be sort of biographical even. So just, lean into it and have fun. So you want to work the movie? Like, because that's what people don't know is this as well. Tied into all of this is where you're all going to be so naive as fans. You're going to think that when like Henry was on top and he used to jokingly, again, almost a joke, dub himself the king of esports and other such things. I mean, first of all, don't declare yourself anything to do with esports. That's my trademark. So whatever, we all know the jokes. When he would do that, right? Even someone like Henry G isn't always guaranteed to get hired to the event that isn't ESL, for example, if he doesn't work with them. Like, even when they come to a massive name that you almost have to hire, these TOs still find a way to do it in a way where they treat you like you have to blow them to get the fucking event, even though you're Henry G or you're Moses or fucking Anders, the literal voice of CSGO, can only do the event if he works with the person you say he does, which is his ex. What? You know what I mean? Like, why are these mind games going on? Because if people don't know this, it's like Kassad said about Blast, and obviously Kassad wasn't here because he was a coach at the time. ESL used to do the same things back in the day. ESL would brag internally about how they wouldn't ever have another Artosis and Tasteless. We'll break up duos in Dota. We'll have a circle of people in CSGO where, Anders and Semler can both attend the event, but maybe the third wheel is D-Man, or maybe it's just D-Man and Anders, or whatever it could be. We'll decide at the time. And the problem is, the fundamental thing is, because these people aren't cynical pros, they're not like, look, I'm not going to use this to say she doesn't say about CSGO, but Shocks can take or leave CSGO. She can go and do League. That's her game. She likes CSGO. Anders and Moses have no interest in going and doing League of Legends now or Valorant. They're trying to be in CSGO. They've lived CSGO. In that scenario, you're taking people who are even the best and making them sort of like, well, you want to work the event though, don't you? That's the angle I'm going to take at the start here. Do what I want. Do it exactly as I want. No negotiate. You don't get input. So everyone, if you don't know, guys, even the biggest names on these talent announcements sometimes get fucked around. What we alluded to earlier, there are cases before majors of the best talent in the world at their role finding out 2 weeks before they're doing the event. And by the way, if you think they don't do that, so you know you don't have a long time to negotiate, and if you fuck around, they'll hire someone else. Spoiler, I'll just say it now. The only reason I was ever hired to do the infamous Katowice was to spite a different talent who was trying to negotiate. So they just brought me. I didn't know at the time, but they brought me in as the scab, essentially.
Yeah. I'll also just add as well, like, it was suggested, let's say, to me by a few people that they've had this talent announcement ready to go for a few days, but they were waiting for the Pick'em sticker launch to kind of like just slide it out, you know. That's good day to bury bad news.
The thing is, like, Dinko is like, first of all, he's good at what he does, right? He's a good caster. I worked with him a couple of events, like when I was with ESL, and he's doing a good job. Second thing, other talent people love him. Like, they like him. So that's an important thing in a circle. You know, the people like you. They want to spend time with you. They want to work with you. That's an important thing, right? And they do like him. And he accepted this thing with Blast to do the interview, to be the interviewer, whatever. Simply because he's a major. Because he's afraid that he says no, they're not gonna call him anymore. That's the fucked up part.
Oh, TOs are also very petty like that. Yeah, if you turn them down, they'll hate you forever, mate. Yeah,
we're not gonna invite you. They don't care about the broadcast at all. They just wanna fuck you over, right? That's what Blast does. The thing to be that interview with Magisk or Magisk or whatever the fuck his name is. Yeah. The thing is, like, he's the worst person to do interview with ever in fucking CSGO. Ever. Every time you do the interview, he's like, yes, no, whatever, I guess. Like, these things are in the contract. They should be in the... I'm saying this, everyone who asks me about the contract, 80% of your fucking salary goes for your contract, 20% of the things like this. So you come out and you say shit like that, I'm coming in and saying, listen, what the fuck are you talking about? What the fuck are you thinking? Like, we have fans, we have sponsors, we have our brand, we have our reputation. Just go there, do the fucking interview for those 30 seconds, 45 seconds, and go cry in your room if you want to fucking cry.
Yeah. And of course, Reddit's assessment there was it was Dinko's fault. So
of course,
yeah,
well, there's a bunch of brainless people there. It's just like,
all right. Let's move on to what is undoubtedly going to be the spiciest segment, which is that now
the ringleader of the circus. Some could say, Monty.
It's unclear what his role is going to be because he seems to be hosting some sort of post game.
No, here's the thing. It is, Monty. They've done this in the past. As far as I know, in the past, like I think Launders did this before. Essentially, it's sort of like it's what I was hired for Berlin Major to do, but never ended up doing. The idea was I was going to do like a post-day show where you have guests and celebrities, and it's a mixture of entertainment, a little bit of analysis, an omnibus. Sure. As far as I know, that's what they're implying. This overtime thing is. It's going to be at the end of the day, and it's only for the championship stage, the playoff part. And I assume it's going to be like a community, I don't know, call-in or so. Who the fuck knows? But that's what it's implied it's going to be.
But before you go there, I want to ask you just a little bit like about Mahone and the weatherman thing before we go into the
I thought it was they put him down as weatherman.
Yeah. Can you fucking imagine it? I worked with the guy in the major in Rio. He's good. Yeah. He's all right. Like he can handle himself.
He's an analyst.
Yeah. Why don't you just put him as a, the guy who's going to be doing the segments and the guy who's going to be at the desk just doing the analyst work? Why the fuck not?
Yeah, just have Mahone as an analyst and have Professor as an actual weatherman. Just have him report every day at the beginning for 1 minute what the weather is.
Good job at that. Professor would be great for that. Like, it's a balmy 20 degrees today.
Yeah, that's an insult to that guy as well. That's an insult to that guy. He's working with Blast for like a couple of years, and he's good. He's like, I watched his segments. I talked to him like in Rio multiple times. We worked at the same desk. He's all right. And then he, instead of doing the weatherman segments plus the analyst desk, he's just doing this. I would tell them to fuck themselves. Just straight up fuck you and your fucking organization. Just fuck off. That would be my.
Anyway, if you wondered why Kassad doesn't work in the major.
Fucking hell, dude.
Anyway, go on then. Come on.
Say Voldemort's name. Say it.
So there is a guy named Jake Lucky who is going to be hosting this post-game show of some variety. And that has probably drawn the most derision from around the industry because he basically has made a trade in being a drama monger across esports. He has been frequently inaccurate, oftentimes damaging to people, unfairly damaging to people's reputations. He is not even really an esports personality anymore because he realized that doing streamer drama was significantly more profitable and traction and, got him more traction. So why he would be regressing into an official esports event at this point in time is a little bit interesting. And frankly, the people who are natives of this industry, I don't know anybody who fucking likes this guy at all or thinks he's doing a good job, or it's not even about liking him. Thinks he's not a piece of shit. It would be the best way to put it.
I mean, I thought you were very generous.
He's great.
Yeah, I thought you were very generous with your assessment there, Monty. Like, one, I would have just described him as a living tick on the ass of esports, sucking the lifeblood and potentially infecting the host. But I'll also say, Richard is absolutely right. Well, you are quite wrong there, Monty. Tons of Zoomer morons think Jake Lucky's amazing.
Not even Zoomer morons.
No. People who work in the industry.
Unironically, industry people that think he should be nominated for Journalist of the Year. He should be, he should be nominated for Content Creator of the Year. He's actually like a pretty good fucking, he's great at what he does. Actually, Jake Lucky, he makes esports accessible. How can you not appreciate that, Richard?
To be fair, he does know all the teams in CSGO, Monty. He has a jersey of every single one of them. He must be a massive fan.
Yeah, and you have to understand as well, it's the perfect quid pro quo because, Jake Lucky is somebody that it's really interesting. He only ever seems to be critical of content creators that are already catching a lot of heat.
Yep.
You know, you'll never hear him say, like, you know, it's bad that this player's been picked up, or does anyone remember this guy doing that and why is he there? No. It's just, okay, there's a thread on livestream, Phil, telling me it's okay to dislike this guy. Think I'm going to wade in with a hot take here. I think the guy that's been filmed being racist is bad.
By the way, if you want one that Monty might not even be aware of, here is a real world example of what Jake Lucky and his people at Esports Talk did as an actual episode of Esports Talk. You remember that minor stupid drama where Sir Scoots, when we were doing Flashpoint 1, on the first week where we locked down, even though absolutely within the California, like mandate, whatever, it said if you worked an essential job like media in a production studio, as long as you took the necessary precautions, you could do the event. Sir Scoots, for his own reasons, he has his own reasons as to why, basically tweeted saying that, like, if we run the event and anything happens to our family, he sort of implied like it's your fault, basically, which is an outrageous statement to make publicly about fellow professionals.
Especially, remember, this was like a few days into the pandemic, and nobody had any fucking clue what was going on.
Yeah, exactly. I mean,
so when they reported
established rules, like,
so when they reported this on Esports Talk, I've got this saved. Don't worry, motherfucker. There was the thumbnail of the video was my face, and the question written on the thumbnail was something like, "Is Flashpoint killing people?" ? Now that's where scum journalists use a question mark to do all the heavy lifting and get plausible deniability. You are absolutely trying to put into people's brains that I am killing people, my own fucking family. That's this is when we say drama monger, and I say that thing about it being a tick, you're all going to think, oh, it's being over the top. Now, no. By the way, compared to this guy, the professor guy is a real journalist. At least he's doing his own fucked up version of trying to do it. This guy is absolutely just without a moral compass as far as I can tell. He's unmoored.
As I showed on my stream, just, because I was trying to flesh out why I have objections. Like, it's interesting what constitutes getting people cancelled. For example, Duncan has committed unbelievable amounts of atrocities in social media terms. For example, suggesting like Fallen might be overrated, which is the highest upvoted post
That's a Twitter war crime
in Reddit CS:GO history. Right? Even like tweeted out all the professional players said like Duncan's a piece of shit. Everyone was calling for him to be blacklisted.
Dude, I even had people who aren't even in CS:GO, like Moist Critical, just go, "I'll just come in on this, get some of this clout." Like,
exactly. Everyone. Yeah, like.
By the way, people like Doublelift were coming in. Anyone who hated me, like Doublelift, who doesn't even follow CS:GO, was just coming in like, "Simple, I love you, man." Like, just like, it was fucking mental, mate. You just thought they'd have killed me. You thought they'd have killed me and they just held up my dead head. Like, we got him, lads. We got Saddam. Like, you know what I mean? Like, it's mental, mate.
So they did that, right? They did. So that's a thing that literally happened in the community, and everyone's okay with that. Well, okay, let's look at some of Jake Lucky's past. When reporting on a revenge porn story involving some female esports players, the thumbnail he used for the video talking about that at Esports Talk was literally sort of an attractive anime girl and a cartoon ransom note with the letters cut out from newspapers saying, like, "We have your pictures." Right? So grotesquely irresponsible, reporting around something that's very, very destructive. Revenge porn ruins lives. There's been a legal case right now involving Twitter where a young adult was sort of, he was catfished. He gave nudes across, and then it turned out to be like some predatory pedophile sex offender guy at the other end who then was saying, "I'll send these pictures to your parents," and shaming them into providing further content. Revenge porn is despicable. It's like it's great that we're starting to get law around that. Jake Lucky thinks it's something frivolous that you could just make a titillating cartoon about. But perhaps worse than that was the thumbnail he did for the allegations around Sinatra, where, again, sexual assault allegations, something you have to have a fucking degree of sensible sensitivity around when you report on these topics. Jake Lucky's thumbnail, Sinatra red with like demon eyes, and the person making the allegation in a salacious pose showing off her cleavage. This guy's garbage. This guy is garbage. This guy would sell his soul to be Keemstar. That's all you need to know about him. And him...
That's the worst indictment of all time, Richard.
And it is 100% true. I'm 100% true. You know, there's no standards with this guy. All that matters is the clicks, the engagement. And people are saying, oh, it's only an overtime show, Richard. I regret to inform you, if you go to his Twitter feed, which I don't follow, right? But because, you know, I'm not a Zoomer and I know about the industry, so why would Jake Lucky offer anything to me? Like, he literally retweets people's tweets. So, like, someone will say, we need to kick this player. This is true. He literally did this the other day. We need to kick this player. And he screenshots the tweet of the player saying, we need to kick this player. And then his tweet says, player says, we need to kick this player. What is your function, you cunt? Like, what is that? I can look at the original tweet. You offer nothing, no insight. But anyway, he has said he will be sitting down with the pro players after the games and interviewing them and asking them questions. And so he will be in the major. He will be doing content in the major. Not someone who's qualified to be an interviewer, not someone with a history of being in CSGO, not people who are established broadcast talent.
Do you know the irony?
Anyway.
Even Professor would be better at this role.
Yeah.
Wouldn't this have been a better role for Professor? You know what I mean?
For him. Yeah.
Yeah, he does it already on HLTV. Confirmed, guys.
Yeah,
By the way,
absolutely perfect.
Just as an aside, that's also one of the maddest things to me about the Jake Lucky angle. This isn't like when I had a beef with Slasher, who was a legitimate journalist and had a long history in the industry. This guy is adding no value. As Richard says, he takes a tweet, puts it in a video, then just says what the tweet is, and then nearly every episode goes, so we'll see how that sort of develops. It's not even on the level of a shit Shuddersphere video where they give some sort of crap cultural analysis. He wouldn't even add any info. They wouldn't have a talking head to bring in. That's why he had to get that fucking idiot Hunter Grooms who was at arsehole to Richard on, just so there could be two of these morons to go, yeah, and I wonder how it will fucking turn out. Anyway, back to you. Like, and then it would just end. And the worst thing is, just like Shuddersphere cunts, they would make these videos magically hit that 10-minute mark so many fucking times with no content in, which if you don't know, if you're not a YouTuber, you used to have to get to 10 minutes to insert additional ads into a YouTube video. So famously, when you do just some bullshit like retweet a source, you have to draw the video out to get to the 10 minutes. So this is like the most lowbrow, low-effort content by someone with no skills or qualifications at all. And by the way, that's without, like, to be fair, you could tell the story better than me, Richard. This guy, if you don't know, there's two details about this guy that are very relevant, not least because he's never truly disowned what happened. He's just sort of tried to put it in the past. Cunts always do that. Oh, it's just in the past. Not really sorry for it, just in the past. That, even though, by the way, his whole career is dredging up the past of other people. Just, he gets to choose when the state statute of limitations run out. There's two things. I'll pass it to Richard, he knows the details of the story better than me. One is this guy is the reason we got DK, one of the best journalists we had in CSGO, because of the story now of what this guy did, where it isn't just modern day stuff. Back when he used to run a channel called CSGO News, which means he was literally presenting himself as a journalist, he did a video where he attempted to expose the streamer more for infidelity to, I think what was at the time his fiance about to become his wife. Can you tell the details of that story? You know the info on it.
What happened was, for some reason, Mo basically said something negative about Jake Lucky. I can't remember what started it. I think maybe he just said pretty much the assessment of his career. Because remember, Jake Lucky had tried to establish himself as a bona fide reporter at one point. I think he'd even tried to do some roster moves. But the thing with that is, you have to be connected to the scene. Someone can't just tell you, I heard this cunt's going to this team. You can't just do it, right? It's not that simple.
Exactly. This isn't Rush B Media we're talking about.
Yeah, exactly, right? So anyway, right, Mo said something like CSGO News doesn't know what he's talking about. And Mo was like obviously very popular at the time in terms of streaming. This is kind of in the era of, when, skins, gambling's everywhere and case openings everywhere and blah, blah, blah. So Mo's obviously, big at the time. And anyway, so Jake Lucky, just coincidentally, at the same time, Mo has said something negative about him, just so happens to find an account on a dating site, on a dating app that isn't Tinder, a pretty obscure one.
Yeah, some weird one no one had ever heard of as well.
Where the profile pic was Mo. Right? And so he said, big story coming about Mo, hyped it all up, and then published a video just uncritically saying Mo has an account on this dating website and is just probably cheating on his wife with it. Now, there's so many wrongs with that. I mean, first of all, you don't know it's Moz. You can't prove it's Moz. Anyone can use a profile pic. I think after this podcast, I might create an account called I'm a Satanist Who Eats Babies and use Jake Lucky's fucking pictures. And says, apparently that's like all you need to be found fucking guilty of it, mind you. If that were true, we'd probably be elected. Anyway, leave that one alone. I beat you to it, Duncan, didn't I? But anyway, so not only can you not prove it's not his account, I mean, loads of people have accounts on dating sites. It doesn't even mean you're out there fucking with anyone. It just meant at a time when you were single, you created it. Now you don't. You know what I mean? But he did none of that because he just wanted to get back. So in other words, he weaponized journalism for revenge. You see, and obviously that's a huge ethical no as well. So it's one of those things where it's like, I don't know how many strikes this guy has to have to be like, discounted from being in the talent pool. But the bottom line is he's got 420,000 followers on Twitter and everyone in the industry panders to him because of that fact. So he gets to work a major. And I'll use that point. Can mug off Jake Lucky for a little bit longer because I do enjoy that. But I'll make this point that this is all because Blast only care about Blast.tv. That's what all of this is for. It's all about them launching their streaming platform. They have essentially hijacked the major to do this, and this is why you will find shithouses like Jake Lucky being folded into the broadcast.
It's also Jake Lucky announced on his Twitter, I just looked it up, that he's going to be doing coverage and asked for player and team interviews. So they want to use his platform to drive viewership to the major, right? That's clearly part of it.
Imagine being a player or team who had a scandal or some fucked up salacious story about you, and then this guy interviewing you.
Yeah,
you have to go and do the interview with this guy.
Yeah,
in order to be part of the major.
He was asking for. I don't know if they were going to require that.
Blast will send him their way, mate. I know these things work.
He was going to be making content, at the major. So there's that aspect to it as well. And to describe what Blast.tv is, they made an announcement recently that the major is going to be streamed in 4K on Blast.tv. So it's clear that they want people to start using their platform, which, by the way, is not unreasonable because, again, one of the major problems that we've talked about repeatedly on this show is monetization of platforms. Like, we don't have the media deals. We don't have the media rights to sell. So you are seeing, and Riot announced recently that they are starting up their own platform also. So it seems like some of these tournament organizers are really turning towards their own proprietary platforms so that they don't have to just be in the thrall of Twitch and YouTube this entire time, which, by the way, is a massive problem. But to Richard's point, it's very clear that this platform is one of their major commercial drives as part of this major.
Yeah. And look, I get it. Like, the problem we've got industry-wide is the fact that there are two, there's really two platforms out there that you need to be on, and neither of them are ideal, and neither of them really make you any money. And in a way, you're essentially making them money by putting your content on there. We've entered into a time where, as we've talked about in previous shows, the Overwatch deal pretty much ended it for everyone because they massively overpaid for a product that massively under-delivered. So I get building a proprietary platform. E-League were experimenting with this when I was there,
Right. But I think part of the problem is that the platforms themselves are not really making money off of esports because people are, first off, they have to deal with the costs of delivering enormous bandwidth. It's not cheap to have 1 million concurrent viewers on a major for the platforms. And then they are not, fans are not subscribing to these channels, which is the main revenue driver of Twitch, right? Yeah. Because they get a ton of, they get $1.50 per user that subscribes, which is a very high amount of money to get from one person. So there are other factors here. It's not like this money is being held back because because of malicious reasons. The money just doesn't exist in esports because the platforms aren't making money. And we can argue that that is a terrible feature of the platforms, but it's also been a decision by the developers to use this as a marketing tool for as many people as possible rather than a subscription or pay-per-view system, which esports was kind of, over a decade ago. So we've talked about that quite a bit, so I don't want to get into it.
Yeah.
But yes, I do think that now, as a result of this, that the tournament organizers and even the developers themselves are trying to come up with Twitch/YouTube alternatives where they can make more money and kind of track their audience better, which is, what it appears that Blast.tv really wants to do.
Yeah, and as I said, I mean, look, we just had a major that was hijacked by an influencer in Rio, where it was the Gaules show, basically, and it ruined the whole fucking event. And now, this Blast.tv focus, it does feel that like almost everything is secondary towards this goal of driving people to their website, watching 4K for free over here on Blast TV. Here's all these integrations. Let's put it all on the table. And I'll bring Kassad in here because I'm not used to him being quiet, but he probably just saw what David De Gea did in the fucking Manchester United.
I saw it. It's right there.
Yeah.
Fuck me, dude.
I can tell by your face. Anyway, the reality is, Blast have run one of the worst organized majors even up until this point, and I do believe it's because they've either tried to cut corners or they've channeled their limited resources into what their priorities are, and their priority hasn't even been like running good qualifiers. Like, I don't know if you saw this, the RMRs were probably overall the worst, and I'm not talking about format. I won't bore everyone with my views on why the scene is piss weak right now, but I'm talking about, right, we had an RMR, CIS RMR, quite famously, where it appeared one team just fucking radar hacked the entire time in a very obvious way and went from being like 158th in the world to being conceivably able to beat the #1 team in the world and neutralize the #1 player in the world just randomly in a game. How amazing. But anyway, forget that. I thought that could never happen again. We just had the Asian RMR, where for the I believe the entirety of the tournament, players had internet access on their competition PCs. How can any of those results stand?
Who is responsible for that? Like, they had people volunteering for the admin job. Like, first of all, they organized for some whatever reason the event in Mongolia, the country that has never seen an esports event of any size that matters, right? They probably had some local things, and that's it. Some of them semi-regional, and that's it, right? This is a RMR for the last major, whatever the hype we talked about it, right? They cut corners, cut costs there, so there is people who are working as volunteers there. Mm-hmm. They have no idea what the fuck are they doing. What did you expect them to do? Like, they probably don't even know the rules. Or they didn't know if they need to check up for the internet, or for the timeouts being like longer than 30 seconds, or all this shit that was happening, right? They were just volunteering, doing their their part for the major, whatever, not being paid. And that is actually, yeah.
Are you guys ready to go into the RMR shit? Like, we can do
absolutely.
it.
Yeah, just as an aside, I've got a very quick thing to say as well, which is one other reason why this isn't all just like because someone might think, well, Blast has done some really good events. What about those ones in the Royal Arena? Like, give them a chance. They could do good. There's a detail I can't believe people haven't mentioned when you consider like the hit Flashpoint Gar, or if anyone new comes in the scene, everyone just gets shit all over, right? E-League, MLG, right? Think about this. As far as I know, Blast has never run a tournament in CSGO as a LAN with more than 8 teams in attendance. Ever. If you don't know, 8 teams is just the playoffs of the fucking major. Now you have like 24 teams at a major. So this is one thing that is a very misunderstood aspect. A Blast event lasts less than a week. It's a bunch of days. First couple of days are off, not in the arena. They're just like fucking tournament area things. Then you do a very small, like basically weekend it's almost like an old school LAN from 10 plus years ago. Like, it's actually mad to me that people just assume, well, because they did a good job in their home country in a stadium with 8 teams, they could probably just run a giant world championship. That's one area I will always give ESL mad props. ESL's been running giant tournaments like that since literally like I was in my fucking 20s, which is years ago at this point, obviously. previously. They had all those events with scaffolding at them and big arenas. Like, they are masters of what they do in that sense. I might not have liked IM Rio, but that's actually because they do such amazing jobs in Cologne, Katowice, all around the world, in Dota as well. So the idea you're just going to assume Blast will be awesome at it. No, I'll tell you what, just like talent can sink or swim when they go on the broad. If you've never done a giant event, oh my God, can things go wrong? And in this case, by the way, people haven't thought this through. They've condensed the schedule. It's the same number of days as a normal major, but past majors was Swiss System Phase 1, same days, say like Monday to Thursday. Swiss System 2, the next week, Monday to Thursday. Then the playoffs would be the week after. They've made it so the two Swiss go into a week and a half, then the playoffs, 2 whole weeks for this major, with I think 1 day break between phases. If anything goes wrong, this major is fucked and cannot be fixed. And that's if they nail it at the outset and just have a problem.
And also, to your point, like the thing about ESL too is that they also have a worldwide network of offices and have the capability of operating in multiple continents simultaneously, which is not really something that Blast has. So let's talk about the RMR system, because even though the RMR system is just fucking terrible, like Valve mandates this, so it's not a good system, but if you try and do a major, you are opting into running the qualification in the way that Valve wants it run, which does suck a lot and is a million games. But there were a lot of issues with the RMRs independently, and also the scheduling of the RMRs. So players were like flying all over the world to different events and like playing in on one continent 2 days after like completing an RMR event, right? What were the issues that the RMRs were creating for people?
Thing is, like, first of all, I don't know who thought it was a good idea to organize an RMR in Mongolia. Who is that rocket scientist? Who is that, person that decided
that's got to be cost cutting.
It'll be very cheap.
It's got to be a combination of cost cutting, and I don't know what China's zero COVID policy does to travel.
I mean, but the thing is, if you're picking somewhere in Asia, like we know that there is a base of Counter-Strike players, because like Korea could have been it could have been done in Korea, but there aren't really Counter-Strike teams.
It doesn't even have to be in the Asia. Like, you have 8 teams, fly them into Copenhagen. You have the infrastructure. You have the people who are going to be.
I think that's much more expensive.
By the way, for IM Rio, wasn't the American RMR in like fucking Sweden, even though the major was in? That's not even that's been done before. You can go to whatever region you want. Yeah,
it's 8 teams. It's not like 16 teams that you have to fly in. It's 8 teams because you decided it's going to be 8 teams for the Asian RMR. They flew them in. They're supposed to fly them in Copenhagen. You have the infrastructure. You have the people. You have the admins. You have the hotel, everything is there. The cost might be a little bit higher, but at least you're going to do it right.
Yeah.
They decided to do it in Mongolia.
I just love that the venue for this, and not that it's not a nice place, because I'm looking at pictures of it right now, was the Holiday Inn Ulaanbaatar, which is the capital of Mongolia.
The hotel, motel, Holiday Inn.
Which, I'm sorry, when you tell me that we're running an esports event in the hotel Holiday Inn Ulaanbaatar, that sounds like a satire. I mean, it's pretty good.
when you go into the actual event, like, you had the internet option, like everybody had internet for some reason. Nobody checked that. There's supposed to be one person that is in charge of all these volunteers. Somebody who is being paid by Blast to actually keep things in order. That person
not to mention, they cancelled the entire first day of the Asian RMR, right? Yes. If I remember rightly.
Because of the delay, yeah.
Yeah, they said it's too delayed, so we're just not going to do it. So they were operating a day behind because of infrastructure issues. Then, obviously, that spills over into integrity issues. Now, it's not even just the fact that they had fucking internet access the entire time, which, as I said, if there's one region where I would be worried about integrity issues and match-fixing potential, I don't know, like, guys, maybe I'm old-fashioned. Maybe Asia is that region just based on the pure numbers and the things I've seen in my reporting, but whatever, forget that. There was also, just to add insult to injury, they didn't enforce Valve's rules about coaches. So when they were winning games, when they were winning rounds, the coaches were just like rubbing their shoulders and whispering in their ear and fist bumping, and I'm like, how's this happening? Like,
I also forget if this was the Americas one or the Asia one, but one of these RMRs had unofficial people as coaches.
Yes,
people not even registered. Yeah. Think about how mad this is, Monty. People who aren't even registered to be at the event as coach, just like, All right, lads, go and
I'm
pee.
surprised Valve didn't step in.
Yeah.
They're really anal about these rules.
And by the way, are we doing the RMRs in general? Are we going to go Asian and then go through
whatever you guys want to talk about.
Because here's another one. I'll give you a random detail. This is a classic example of where I can never be right, even if everything I say factually holds up and has all of history behind it. So are you ready? At the European RMR, accidentally, he claims, but that's irrelevant to how you enforce rules. Simple just walked in, I think during a live match, to the wrong team's booth and just was stood behind, like on his phone, looking at the screens of a different team in the tournament playing. If you don't know that in any sport, A, you wouldn't be able to get back there. B, who the fuck are the people running the tournament as admins who don't know what Simple looks like? The greatest player of all time. He'd only like a few months earlier, by the way, been voted like player of the fucking decade. You can't even recognize him. And then also, that would be an instant penalty of something, a minimum of warning, because you essentially could have like cheated in that way. You could watching their screen. There's a million factors as to why that can't happen. By the way, that wasn't even something that was a scandal, Monty. I just saw that. It was a blip on the radar for everyone else. And when I said this should probably be like a minimum, a warning or a penalty, people were like, but why? It's simple and he wouldn't have done it. Oh God, I can't do it, boys.
You can't explain that. You can't explain that concept. It's just very difficult. It's like I would fire all these admins. Just send them home.
Well,
like, it's not even Simple's fault. Like he was just walking. He wandered in, like whatever. But what the fuck was admin doing? Just stop him. Hey, you can't go in there, mate.
They didn't even use the right rule set in Asia. So they didn't have the right server config. So every time they were taking timeouts, it was 60 seconds instead of 30. And for the time after rounds, it was set to 7/5. So there was like, so basically like players could die.
Oh, by the way, apparently I did miss a simple one. Apparently that was EPL, people are saying. To be fair, I could be wrong.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. There was like 2 extra seconds at the end of a round where you could go and hunt guns. So if you were a CT and you had to save, there was 2 extra seconds that you could get caught out. So, I mean, the Asian RMR was a complete fucking disaster. Then in the Americas one, we had the same thing with the coaches, the law not being enforced. And then the coaches, they decided when they were muted or not the admins. So at any time, they could just unmute themselves and go, hey, what up? I'm looking at the screen, yeah. Do this. And you wouldn't know about it. Like, obviously, it's recorded, but Blast aren't going to impugn themselves. And then they also, at one point, had malfunctioning headsets. And so when they wanted to talk to players, they had to lean in and talk into the player's headset to address the team. So, I mean, so that's just incompetence. So anyway...
But it's not like some Kanye shit, like, yeah, I'm gonna let you finish it, IGL, but team dinner at 12. Like,
right. So Blast, this was all put to them by journalists. I mean, Note from HLTV did a fantastic job on reporting all of this. And anyway, it was all put to Blast, and Blast said none of this shit happened. They denied, even at one point, saying that the coaches couldn't interact with players. They literally said, we're looking into this. I've got the quote here. We're looking into this, and if this did occur, we will investigate. There is video footage of them doing it. How long is this investigation?
Also, that rule came in at like Stockholm 2021, if you remember, the one where the coach couldn't talk. That was ages ago, mate.
Yeah. So Blast essentially were like deflecting all these perfectly valid criticisms for the RMR. Now, look, I'm not saying this had any sort of outcomes, but at the end of the day, you ran qualifiers for a world championship. The world championship you said you always wanted to do and intimated to the fans that you've been pitching for all this time when you never had, right? The final one in CSGO. And you've ran the qualifiers in such a slipshod manner that in any other world, like in a sensible world at least, the Asian RMR would have been replayed. None of those results would be allowed to stand. And you would be dishing out sanctions to the teams that violated the rules, as well as offering a public mea culpa for you not applying the fucking rules. And I certainly hope Valve have been on you about it, but let's be real, Valve probably don't actually give a shit. So it's crazy to me how bad the RMRs were run. And I'm telling you guys, this is Blast on unfamiliar territory in a stadium in France where, look, I'll just fucking say it best. By the way, this party's popping off outside my house right now. I don't know if you can hear that, but anyway, right? Like, I'll just say this: like, even in Paris, good luck finding a bunch of English-speaking, esports savvy, cooperative staff to help run your event if something goes wrong. So you're already a fish out of water in what you're doing. Right, you're already going to have limited resources for what you're doing. Your on-site support probably not going to be as good as what you used to. And you've just shown me that actually when it comes to running qualifiers where you do outsource and you do take your eye off the ball, they are a total fucking disaster. So I have reservations about getting excited about this event and whether or not it's going to be smooth running and up to the usual Blast standard. And I think everyone should be prepared for the classic day one tech issues, maybe, and beyond. Because,
by the way, oh, sorry.
I'm just saying, because that's what they've shown me.
By the way, that's also something I'd tie into what I said before about when you think of the best Blast events, all the production and all the stage, it's nearly always venues they've been to multiple times. Like the best ones are always the Royal Arena because that was where they've been since 2017. By the way, you'll notice even ESL can slip up like that. If ESL's in their home places, Cologne, Katowice, even places like Malta now, they know what they're doing. They know the lay of the land. They have all the people, the contingency plans. When they go somewhere new, they've fucked up before. In this case, when does Blast do events in France, guys? Like, this is like totally uncharted territory. There's so many variables and logistics could go wrong.
And the fact they have more than 8 teams, just straight up. I saw what they did.
I think Kassad, you're right to bring that up again because Blast has done, in my opinion, a very good job of like polishing tournaments, giving us really excellent content. I mean, in an era where ESL was kind of spitting out the same bland run of show, same bland product, no shoulder content, no videos, nothing like that, over and over and over again before they got bought. We saw Blast really trying to be creative, create innovative content. It's good. But the problem with that is, as you point out, it was with a limited number of teams and it was a long preparation for like a week-long event. You have a lot of time in order to get that ready. The kind of content that you can create before a major playoffs, right? Before the final 8 teams are in the bracket, after Swiss, when you've already condensed the schedule from 3 weeks to 2 weeks, is going to be really, really hard to replicate that level of polish and that level of unique content. Like really hard. Probably impossible if we're being honest, with the budgets at least that exist in Counter-Strike, because we're not a multi-billion-dollar sport that can hire 1 million camera crews and editors to just hack it out over a couple of days. So I do think that
he is the shoulder content of this event.
Christ. No, but anyway, like I think it's very difficult because the skill set is very different. Blast is about a long preparation for a relatively small event. Where to you guys' points, ESL is excellent at doing these large scale events and making sure that they run smoothly in all of these different locations. And we've seen in previous majors, famously like the Face It major had like a lot of issues with the live broadcast. And if you're not really good at solving those problems quickly or are aware of what problems could crop up and solve them before the event even starts, it can be really hard to do that because once everything gets going, there's very little room for error.
But did you see what happened when they had 16 teams outside of Denmark? That's in Monterrey. First of all, why would you organize? I understand, like maybe because of the logistics, you can go into NA because of the visas, so they make it like it's the closest thing to NA. I was in Monterrey in 2021, playing the RMR from Hilton Hotel. That city might as well be fucking Medellin from the fucking Pablo Escobar era. Dude, it is fucked. Being there.
Yeah, the party was that good, was it? Fucking hell.
The guy in the fucking hotel in the gym in the morning, one day we were just sitting there doing our shit and we start talking. And he says like, listen, I've been out yesterday in the middle of the day and he got robbed in the fucking middle of the city, downtown. And you go there like first time, like in that area, you have no idea what's going on. You organize an event with 16 teams. in the city that has never had anything to do with esports ever. You have so many things that were issues with the headsets. I think they didn't even have the headsets for the first part of the tournament. I think I did the podcast with HLTV when we were talking about this. Like, what did they think at some point? Like, when you run the rehearsal the day before and there is no headsets, that you're gonna go to bed and wake up and then magically the headsets will appear? Like, what's the idea behind that shit?
Yeah, I mean, there's a worrying trend in general where it's like, I understand that we want to show how global esports is. And look, we brought this up all the time. I don't care what country you host an esports event in, but if you're doing that, and then if you're doing an event abroad, and it just so happens that due to economies of scale, it's cheaper to do it in that country, don't then go to the cheapest spot in that country. Because unfortunately, the rest of the world, best will in the world, there are some countries where the economic disparity creates unbelievable grinding poverty for the poor people in that country. And when people are pushed to that limit, there is going to be crime. That is a reality of it. It is a reality of it. And I'm not just being like one of those Western imperialist dirtbags. I'm talking about in America, for fuck's sake. I'm talking about in European countries, because all the greedy fucking political class have hoovered all your fucking money out of your pockets, and you will notice that wealth disparity is creeping up, not going down. And so in the countries that already had massive wealth disparity, guess what's happened there? Oh, the same. The huge transfer of wealth. So crime rates are going up. Now, that's not necessarily true in all of these countries, but there are some countries that are so fucking raw right now. And here we are in esports thinking, I know what we'll do. We'll run an esports event with loads of shiny bits of equipment in this crime hotspot in this country, and let's send a bunch of fucking nerds there. And let's see what happens.
We have Rolexes and fucking expensive shirts and expensive shoes and all this shit, right? Send them right there without any support.
All I'm saying is, we definitely have to do a much better job of selecting esports venues in general, and that applies all around the world. That's not to impugn any countries. That's just because, I want safe events, and we don't do this in sports. You don't go and host a Champions League final. You don't go, oh, well, we're going to do it here this time, and, to save a bit of money, we're going to put it here where we know the crime rate's higher and blah, blah, blah. It's fucking crazy, man, what we're doing in esports right now.
The bottom line is that Blast were cutting costs massively to make up. My first thought was maybe they're saving all their money for Paris, but I don't think that's the case. That's my first thought, but I don't think that's the case.
Look, we know the esports industry, like I said at the start of the show, is fucked right now. I'm sure that Blast maybe didn't want to do it this way, but also, guys, the other reason that Mexico is chosen for these
visas,
events,
right?
is because of visas. And it's very easy. It's the same reason that I was hosting the Rainbow Six Major in Mexico City, which I had a great time at, and I really enjoy Mexico City. Monterrey is not known as a particularly dangerous city in Mexico. I mean, you have anecdotal evidence, kassad, but there's risks with being in Mexico in general. But I mean, we've had Cancun events by Faceit as well. Now, I think probably
in a resort, right?
Yeah, at the resort.
Ain't no one getting robbed in Cancun. Cartel kill them for doing that,
Right. Well, which is why maybe some of those locations like Cancun or Tulum or some of the tourist resorts might have been a better choice than Monterrey, which is not a super famous tourist destination. But
I just like the way Richard actually explained that the reason why Cancun is safe is because actually even the mob cartel don't like that. So the people who kill you in the other places, they'll actually protect you there. So that's so
true. All the big tourist spots in Mexico, the cartel say if people start getting fucking robbed in these tourist spots, then all of the businesses that we take protection money from, and all, they're not going to be able to pay us because tourists are going to stop coming. So if you rob a tourist in this area, off with your head. In this case, quite literally. So that's how that operates.
Anyway,
the bottom line. I do think in general, to the point that esports does tend to operate in lower cost venues. I mean, I was in Saint Denis in Paris for Worlds for League of Legends, which is one of the worst neighborhoods in Paris, which wasn't fun. When League of Legends was in San Francisco, they fucking put the players in hotels in the Tenderloin, which is the worst neighborhood and basically an open air drug market in San Francisco. And like people from all over the world don't know how to navigate that kind of environment. So it's not about the country. Like, don't go to the Tenderloin in San Francisco unless you're trying to buy fentanyl.
This is the perfect segue because we can go back to Blast and talk about their spring final. You know, it's not just they're taking their eye off the ball with the major. We can go a little bit beyond. Like they've got a spring final. Where's it at? Anna, what's it called? Anacorsia in DC.
Yeah, I just know it's in DC. I'm not sure where the place is.
I don't know where it is in DC, but
trust. It's rough. It's like, you know, they renamed the street now, but there's like, anyway, basically it's round the corner from like just a famous street where people just get lit up. You can just put this address in and it's just shooting. And that's where the event is. And they've hired a really small basketball stadium for it. They've turned around and basically said like, listen, we don't even bank that NA fans will turn up because there's no NA teams. Team Liquid, one of their business partners, said they didn't even try in the qualifier for this event. And then they failed in the last chance qualifier for this event. Great business partners there. Would love working with Team Liquid if that was me. And Blast are like, we really need an NA team in our NA final that we've pre-booked. And Team Liquid publicly state we didn't even try to qualify. Thanks, lads. Cheers. Anyway, the venue hosts like...
Same people, by the way, who complain about having to come to Europe all the time to they can't strike. You cannot... You don't know the level of clownery in the fucking industry of esports, guys.
No, it's mental, isn't it? It is unreal, isn't it? So anyway, basically, so not only are they have they cut a corner with the venue itself, it's in a, you know, listen, it's DC, say no more, but it's one of the worst parts of DC, say no more. So, you know, at the end of the day, they're doing it there, and it's a small venue, and the tickets sold out in 24 hours even. They were gone. I want to say 24 hours, gone in like 2, because the venue's so small, and they didn't account for fans maybe wanting to go to the event. Now, as I said, there's a lot of people who, in their minds, because CSGO is ending, a lot of people want to get to a CSGO event so they can say they went to at least one in their lifetime, right? Like for the fans of Counter-Strike, it's a big deal. And so there's this added premium right now to being able to get to an event if it's in your local area. I don't understand how Blast can't have their finger on the pulse. They have been one of the most savvy and smart run businesses up until this point, but everything they are doing at the moment reeks of a lack of quality control, reeks of a lack of concern, and you've just become another esports company that just wants to serve up a substandard product. Fuck the fans, fuck your partners, fuck the sponsors, fuck everyone in the entire business. We just want to do this ancillary product thing over here and do this and do that. We want to be a tech company, not an esports company. It's fucking sad.
There's a few things here. One of them is that DC, the city government of DC, has actually been pushing for esports events to be there. So I think that probably is playing into it. Secondly,
like
I looked up.
Paris,
I looked at that. I looked at the arena, and I think the arena itself looks fine. It looks like it has a capacity of about 4,000 people or so. But what people were saying, like, I don't think there's anything wrong with the arena. It just sounds like it might be in a kind of questionable neighborhood. And then the other factor of this too was what we saw was the ticketing. Fans are complaining that they didn't know the ticketing was happening, and by the time they got there, the tickets have already been sold out. It's unclear if that was sold to fans or if it's just a bunch of scalpers, but it seems like demand really exceeded capacity. And it's not that there's a shortage of stadiums or event locations, but it wouldn't surprise me if this was done in conjunction with the DC city government, because they have been across many esports making a push to get more of these kind of events into the DC area.
Well, yeah. Did you see the report actually? Which neighborhood was it? Which area was it? There was some, again, like city council had come out and said the esports event we ran here actually had a tangible positive impact on our economy.
Yeah.
But I can't remember who the fuck it was. Columbia's coming in my brain.
Look, I mean, it does drive significant revenue. I know there was an event recently that was announced in Thorin's coming back, guys.
I'm back.
Yeah, there was an event that was released in or it was the DreamHack San Diego was announced that it had done like $7 million of benefit to the local economy of San Diego, which is great. Now that's a little bit different because that's more of a hybrid esports event / people go there to play games, obviously, and chill out with their friends for the weekend.
Think of all the free crack pipes they could buy with that.
So yeah, I mean, look, I think like this was DreamHack's different because it attracts a lot of people who stay there and stay in hotels and eat at restaurants for an entire, like, multiple days at a time. So it's going to generate more local revenue. But we've seen people fly from all over the country, and fans are not shy about wanting to go to a location for a big final. People travel internationally to do that. There were hundreds of people that have come to events in Korea that have been big esports events there that fly in from all over the world, thousands probably. So I don't know. I think that it would be nice if they were more thoughtful about some of these event locations, but it seems to me that the real problem with the Blast Spring Finals has been that it has been very poorly communicated what the ticketing sales were. Like, I've seen some comments that are like, oh, it was only a small percentage of the tickets that were being sold as a pre-sale and the rest are coming later. But the Blast website doesn't have any of that information. It seems like the communication channels around these sales were really bad. And so the whole thing from a sales perspective just seems to have been massively bungled, and people still don't have any information about this.
Yeah, and that's the other thing Blast are getting notoriously into at the moment now as well. Lack of communication. You know, like, say what you will about ESL and, you know, fuck them forever, right? But and you know, other ones like Esports Engine, which has also been folded into the Death Star now. Every time there is the community need to know something, they are there communicating it. And they communicate it where the community congregates, which is crucial. They don't just put like a statement on their website and expect you to find it.
Has like 3 views a day.
Yeah, exactly. They send a representative onto forums, they tweet, they get players to disseminate the information. You know, you always know where you stand. And I think Blast have fallen into this pitfall right now. Again, I imagine due to being overstretched as they try and desperately survive in the face of an opponent they cannot topple. They just simply must not lose to.
I mean, we know that Blast is very taxed right now in terms of their resources, because even though they've been getting bigger, I mean, think about all the stuff that they've taken on this year. They keep taking on more and more events. They recently absorbed the entire Rainbow Six circuit, basically. Like, they are literally, like, right now having the Copenhagen major in Rainbow Six while they're attempting to run these RMRs and prepare for this event.
Yeah,
like that is crazy for them to try and do, and there is going to be a cost associated with that in terms of production on all. You know, everything's going to suffer, but they feel like they have to do this in order to survive.
Yeah, but what I hate about that is, like, and this is another pitfall all esports entities eventually fall into. It's that they always, and I mean almost always, bite the hand that fucking feeds them, you know? And it's like Blast is where they are and who they are because, you know, when they first came into the scene and they were the upstarts, they ran a terrible first tournament, by the way. They ran a terrible tournament where they were trying to do this like conceptual, like 3 games at once on a rotating stage, loads of tech problems. Format was absolute garbage. They had to cancel the entire first day, which has only happened a handful of times.
There's another detail that should be told in light of what they've done with talent hires after that event. So what they did was for the first ever Blast, and I'll just tell you straight up, it wasn't Blast that got all these people. It was fucking Anders Bloom and people we trusted that knew Blast and knew the people in the Danish scene. And they told us essentially, like, sign up to this event, like, it's going to be really good. They'll let you set your own rates and they'll take care of you. And when you got there, you know what? There was goodie bags. There was all things that you never get if you're a fucking talent. That you get that if you're like a pro player or something. So you were getting all this. You think this is brilliant. And they hired almost everyone. If everyone remembers, famously, I took a joke picture of the entire talent. It was insane. And my joke was that it was the talent having an annual meeting to vote that Mega Man's still not allowed to work in the industry, which was literally an obvious joke, but morons actually were like, this is disgraceful, because that's the level of intellect esports fans are on. So anyway, we were like in this room, even though it's a small event with like 6 teams, it was a Blast Pro Series, a Blast of Ones, even though it was that format, they probably had some mad like 18 talent there. And it was all people that all the tier 1 talent was there. Now, part of why I suspect they did that, by the way, was just find out what our rates are, find out who you can push and pull, find out who really wants to work. They're all the things that help you in the future. Spoiler, Epicenter did the same thing when they came in the scene. And when they ran this event, like Richard says, it was in their home country, guys. And this is, by the way, the first blast where they're even taking money from the Dutch government, the Danish government at this point. I think like €1 million.
The Dutch as well while they're at it, if they can.
The joke is, yeah. But basically, at this event, we turn up. It's in the Royal Arena. I remember thinking, like, fucking hell, it's like a real venue in Denmark. That's a legit thing, like all the big thing. Yeah. We go there, it looked mega. And on day 1, they come and they tell us as talent, get ready, you're going to do a couple of games. They couldn't even get a server working so that the teams could join and play a game. So here's what happened. Instead of this being remembered as the shittest event ever that died immediately and never went, no fan remembers this. Because what happened was, on day 1, people like all the talent, me, Semler, Anders, all these people, we just kept a broadcast going and filled for 4 straight hours or something mental like that, as dickheads like Nickel and I run around going, what is going on with the server, just in the background. And we were just literally, this wasn't Monty, like someone said, you might have to fill for a few hours. We started the thing like, and we're going to go into map 1 and just kept going for hours. And eventually we even just took over the production and told the producer, you know what, essentially fuck off with the idea the game's coming in. We'll just host like sort of a live podcast now in which we have players come on and we talk to like, you know, fucking Taz or like Fallen or something. It was ridiculous, mate. And we carried their asses and won. That was day 1 of Blast. That was who Blast was to start CSGO. And then after that, spoiler, they had a shitty relationship with at least half of that talent and fucked a load of them over, even though some of them, by the way, were the biggest talent in the world. And as I said, that also sours me to the fact that when they finally get a major, they then use petty politics to fuck the kind of people who actually saved their ass and pulled them out the fire.
Yep.
That's
exactly where I was going with it, yeah.
What pissed me off the most is the fact that not they were cutting costs with these RMRs and shit. It's just the people they sent were super incompetent. Like, that's the fucked up part. If you send like a competent guy, you have like a limited amount of people that is going to go to these RMRs that you have to like scramble around. Send somebody who knows what is he doing. He can rile up the people, determine who needs to do what, delegate all the jobs and make sure that the config is there, make sure the fucking internet is off, make sure the headsets are on. Like somebody who's going to be on top of it. That's the guy you're going to pay a little bit more, but it's going to be a limited amount of people that's going to be there, but the event is going to be done by the industry standards. Right now, you send a bunch of fools, bunch of clowns there to just run the event and ruin the whole thing for the players, for the fans, for the talent, for everyone. You remember that the talent on RMRs, they did the interviews, they did the tricasts, they did the mid-game, analysis, pre-game, post-game, everything. And they were paid for one job, not for 3, not for 2, but for 1. That's one daily rate. And those people accepted to do that simply because, they can't say fucking no. And that's, again, we are coming back to the same thing. But the thing is, like, when it comes to the players hate Blast. I'll tell you this. I spoke to multiple players, not a single double-digit players from different teams. Not a single person said, oh, yeah, I'm enjoying Blast. It's so good. 90% of them said it's a waste of fucking time. I like going there. I don't like playing so many maps. I don't like that format. I don't like anything that's going on, and I fucking hate it. It's a waste of time. That's like word for fucking word right there. The second thing, when it comes to Blast and their format and their partnership shit, they have 12 teams in their partnership, cycle, whatever, circle, whatever the fuck is it. And they play each other. They don't have let's say ESL, right? They have the Pro League, they have their partnership teams, and they have the teams that come from the national championships, teams for world ranking, teams from here and there, right? What does Blast have? Have 12 teams, and they play 65 games in 7, upper, lower bracket bullshit, format. And then they have this showdown where somebody can maybe qualify from some region.
They
and
essentially
maybe
make it
one spot into the finals.
Yeah,
one
basically.
spot.
Like he says there, if you're a partner team like an Evil Geniuses, just a bad team that isn't good, you're guaranteed loads of games. And like Kassad says, there's about 1 million ways to still qualify for the finals. But if you're literally, and this used to happen when it was Heroic and Gambit in 2021, everyone remember, if you're the best team in the world, you have to win the most insane fucking official parlay run of all time, where you win like through a qualifier into the showdown. Like, so you might have to win, no joke, like 10 best of threes in a row, like back to back to just to get that one spot to replace an EG at the event. Then they just get to start with the boot. And spoiler, this is why this sucks as well, because shit like that, just getting into that group boosts you in the HLTV rankings. It means if you're the Gambit, like I said in the past, you're shit out of luck, even though you're the number one team in the world. Meanwhile, if you're the people who are in Blast but a bad team, you're just sort of like automatically, that's why when people like the Gamer Doc, by the way, brag about their world ranking, it's like, motherfucker, how did you get to like 100 plus world ranking when you automatically qualify for the tournament? You cretin. That's almost like impressively bad. Yeah, go on then.
Yeah, no, I was just going to add. I was just going to add. I mean, it's one of the things that, like, again, I wish fans could kind of like look at a big picture and understand that, you know, unfortunately, the way Blast has operated, and I understand it's necessary to their survival, but the way Blast has operated is essentially been destructive to the fabric of CSGO as a great competitive esport, and it is a huge contributing factor to why the scene sucks right now, why the teams aren't playing well right now. Like what Kassad is saying about players not enjoying Blast, I've heard the same shit, man. I've heard it from coaches as well. I've talked to frustrated coaches who say it's making them soft, but like the teams, you know, because they're playing each other in these low stakes games, so they don't even practice because it's like it's just an event they have to get through. But think about this: you have Blast essentially came in, mimicked what ESL did, but actually without even the ramps to get into Blast, as Duncan said. It's an insane gauntlet to even have a chance, right? But what they did is they sold their franchise slots. Just because you didn't change your name or you don't own a brand, they are franchise slots, essentially. You bought your way into the league on the grounds that you will get a minimum of X amount of airtime for your sponsors. Your players become walking billboards at that point. It's not high-level Counter-Strike. But then the other issue you've got is, as Duncan says, with the world ranking being so important for things like invites, for getting sponsors, when you artificially pump up teams into that ranking at the expense of other teams, like, for example, like Monty, the Kings of Tier 2 from Ukraine, who played 144 maps, like, in, like, the last, like, whatever the fuck it was, month, right? Like, they are grinding, they are beating Tier 1 teams. They will never have an opportunity to play in these circuits because they can't afford 3 million to buy their way in, 5 million for the Louvre agreement or whatever it was. And so... sorry. So
more. I said more.
Oh, more. Okay, right. So it is unbelievably destructive to the fabric of the scene. What Blast is emulating right now, and I get why they're doing it. It's how they're gonna survive. They're barely surviving even doing these things, but it is a far cry from the cut and thrust of the open competitive landscape we had coming into 2016. And I will remind everyone, E-League, we didn't hold anyone to ransom or keep anyone out. We went to the top teams at the time and said, do you want to play in a televised American league? Yes, no. And we'll make a product around it. That's what we did.
You said, like, you understand them. They do it because they want to survive. I say, fuck them. Let them die. Like,
who needs the Serbian in you again, Kassad?
the thing is like,
remember, by the way, to be fair, those fans did say that Janko was like Ivan Drago. He almost did the Ivan Drago. They was like, if he dies, he dies. Like, that's amazing.
He was weak.
The thing is, like, what do they have to, like, we talked about all this bullshit they're doing and they did in the past. What do they have to show for it? Dude, I talked to you about this, Duncan, and saying, like, what do they have to show? Is there a signature event that Blast does? Do they have their own IEM Katowice, Cologne, like Star Leatherhead, back in Kiev? What do they have? Yeah, Banana cups and the glorified country club cups. That rich people pay to play.
Yes, their format does suck, guys, but there's a couple things here. First off, at the time where this Blast format was created, the teams wanted stability. Like, the teams asked for this, right? They are to blame for this because the format had to be made in a way. And the reason why EG gets 1 million guaranteed games is because they need those games to sell their sponsors. They have to go to sponsors and say, your logo is going to appear X number of times, right? That's the business of the industry. And so Blast, I don't know, probably if you asked people at Blast and they were being honest with you, they wouldn't say, oh, I love the format of our events. It was considered a necessary evil because they were competing with EPL.
But expand the tournament, expanded.
But no. But here's the thing, guys. No. Stop. The other reason why they can't have a signature event is because remember that ESL and Flashpoint and Blast were all competing for spots on the calendar, and ESL was being a dick and monopolizing the calendar. And I don't think it was a lack of desire for Blast to have a tentpole event. The real problem here is, number one, that Valve approved of these tournament formats. Okay, so Valve has to approve of the Blast format, and it sucks that these good teams can't get into it, or it takes 1 million best of threes in order for them to qualify. And the second thing is the problem with Valve is honestly that they haven't been hands-on enough. It should be their job to carve up the calendar to create equal and fair competition.
Listen, you can't tell me that Brazy Party, CCTV, Rubet, whoever the fuck can find a space in the calendar for 10-day tournaments with 400k, and the Blast can't find their signature Blast Copenhagen event once a year. That's not on ESL. There is no more Star Leather, there is no more Epicenter, there is no more PGL, there is only ESL, and there is only Blast. And there is nothing to show. Now. It's just a country club for the rich organizations that can pay their way to play. If you want to expand this thing, you can just introduce more teams, make it more interesting, change the format. You don't have to play 6 upper, lower, double, triple eliminations. It's just a waste of time. Fans don't like it. Players don't like it. Talent don't like it. Nobody likes it.
I agree, man, but they have contracts now, and their contracts might have to stipulate with the teams.
No, but here's the thing, Monty. There's actually a way around this, because, spoiler, ESL did it. The reason why ESL are still the kings of Counter-Strike is they have their own bullshit ranking, and they have the whole Louvre agreement, but they do that, and then they give a very reasonable amount of the tournament that all the other top teams can still be there, because, spoiler, they want both, Monty. They want guaranteed games for Louvre, but then they want all the rest of the best teams in there and all the underdogs. So what they do at, like, Cologne and Katowice is they have that playing format, don't they? And then they do things like they invite you on world ranking. Yes, Blast gives away like
Hometown heroes, for fuck's sake.
Blast gives away 2 spots. Yeah. And now, by the way, one's a bloody America's spot that's not even like an open quad. So now, guaranteed, some fucking team like Fluxor is always there. Not even like Fury or something. So there's that. Then also there's the fact that, like, this is a precedent with Blast. Remember, if we go back to those Blast Pro Series, there's a reason they changed it to Blast Premier, guys. Because Blast Pro Series was that stupid format where you flew in 6 of the best teams in the world, had them play a BO1 against each other in a round robin, which even, by the way, didn't include OT, just a BO1. And then on round difference, people would make a final, which was a BO3, and then you just play, and that was the tournament.
They get the points for the rankings as well. Now, what's fucked with it comes to rankings, it's ridiculous to me that obviously ESL rankings are more relevant because you get those points, you get to play events, whatever, right? And then I have the organizations like those, you know, like I said, Brain Trust over there, have like their contracts with the players depending on their position on HLTV ranking. That doesn't give you anything, literally anything. You can be top 1 on HLTV, you don't get an invite, right?
No.
You get an invite for Brazy Party, you get invite for Rubet Cup and all these like tier 2, tier 3, whatever, that are offering skin money and whatnot. But you're not gonna get like ESL invite there. You have to climb on the ESL ranking to get the ESL invite.
And by the way, Monty, I would even cynically speculate the reason why even in the modern day, the Blast Premier is only 8 teams at the final. By the way, that also absolutely socks balls to do the group stage of a tournament, then have the finals, the playoffs, like 3 months later. ESL does it, then it's the next week or like 2 days later. The storylines don't work, by the way. It's why almost every Blast LAN finals is like, why is OG there, though? 3 months ago, like the upsets. What are you talking about? That's already garbage. But I'll even draw this into a bigger point. I suspect the real reason there's 8 teams at the final is that's how you beat ESL production. You just don't bloody compete. They run a massive 24-team giant tournament in a stadium. You go to your local fucking dig and run 8 teams on a few days and go, I nailed it. How smooth am I? Well, they try and essentially you're like putting on a fucking local public access show and they're running like fucking like Avatar, the movie. You can't, like, it's not even the same ballpark. And I'll tie this in actually to a point again with the major. We can come back. This isn't Blast's fault because they don't decide the RMR formats and they don't decide things like how many slots are there. But sadly, Blast is also going to get absolutely fucked, Face It London style, by the games. And even though Richard didn't want to go into the whole thing, because this whole thing's more about like the top teams, I'll just say it's not even just the top teams. The worst thing ever has happened. You remember how the Face It Major London had a lot of problems, but it could have been saved by the playoffs. If the playoffs had been banging, we'd all be talking about some amazing semi or that in the final, like, you know, simple almost beats. No, every match almost was just a 2-0 easy. Astralis was just clapping everyone. Nobody was really close. And at the end, it was so boring that even though Face It didn't do anything wrong there, the matches just played out wrong. It just wasn't great Counter-Strike. And crucially, the rule of Counter-Strike events is it can be a terrible event as long as the games are great. If the games are great, you'll be saved. Well, spoiler, I'll just give you the quick answer. Remember, I said there's 24 teams, right? Of the 24 teams, there are, and so in theory, in a dream world, you'd have the current top 24 if the qualification all went to plan. Obviously, you can have the odd upset gets here. We all know that, right? Of the top 10, they are missing Cloud9, who are number 6 in the world, who, by the way, recently was in the final of a massive tournament. They are missing Virtus Pro, the reigning major champions of Counter-Strike. That's right, Carmack. Virtus Pro won IEM Rio, not outsiders. There is no such thing as outsiders. Hence, outsiders could not have an office or ever be sent a trophy. You fucking disingenuous cunt. Virtus Pro won that. You tried to steal history from them because of your own fucking bias against a specific unrelated country. Then Virtus Pro out there, the reigning champions. Big, number 13 on the HLTV rankings, not in attendance. They didn't qualify. Spirit, number 21, even been in playoffs of the last majors, not there. Astralis, by the way, the greatest org of all time in terms of accomplishments this year. They're not there. They're number 24. And even number 25, or 24, Thorin. Oh, no, don't worry. The Movistar Riders team that just made you look absolutely silly by just winning a small LAN over some teams like the old BNE that are at the major. They're not there either. And then finally, I'm not throwing them in just as a joke. Evil Geniuses is a giant name in esports and was even at Rio and Stockholm. They weren't at Antwerp.
Yeah, they even made it there.
Yeah. Even those shit ones, at least a team with some fans, with some history is there. Instead, you have teams which, yes, earned their spots relative to the format, but are nobodies. So you have the likes of Into the Breach. I am from the UK. I didn't even know Into the Breach existed. There are teams on there who are literally nobody has heard of. Some of them, this is like the first moment they're having this success. There are teams where, like Apex, the joke is, Kassad probably didn't even know Jacob still plays Counter-Strike. Of course he does, it's a joke. But you know what I mean? That's like the level we're on. So the problem is when you fill through the tournament with that, now even if Blast get like good games, they're not people anyone knows, so you're not tuning in. And God forbid they're either stomps or just bad games. Like if you have bad Swiss system into bad Swiss system, and then God forbid, by the way, it's like Into the Breach quarterfinals. Now you're all going to go, oh, why are you hating? Because it'd be the lowest viewership of all time for a match. Like that alone will kill the major. And I saw Carrigan in his bloody interview doing that sort of thing. Like, it's the last CSGO major, guys. We've got to pull together and make it the biggest ever. It doesn't work that way, Carrigan. It's not like a fucking chain email. Like, if you don't go watch this major, you die in 4 days. Like, you have to have casuals come. People who don't know anything about CSGO, they're coming if they see Na'Vi, Cloud9, Virtus Pro. These are the teams they're coming to watch. They're not coming to watch Monty or Into the Breach or fucking the Mongol. They're just not. I'm afraid that is a reality. So you are not going to get... The reason why we know, by the way, this is the case is because when Gambit was the number 1 team in the world, people only tuned in to watch them if Na'Vi played, who wasn't number 1 in the world. That's Counter-Strike. Counter-Strike, we all think it's Reddit and people on HL... No, they're actually, believe it or not, a HLTV forum poster is an aficionado or expert at Counter-Strike compared to the average viewer. The average viewer is someone who needs to be told through the client it's happening to go on Twitch Discovery, see Counter-Strike, oh my God, a major. And then if he sees Monty versus Into the Breach, he's tuning out. He's not clicking that fucking link. He's never clicking it.
Yeah.
The joke is, even the ones who don't like Virtus Pro, like the boring style, you might even get a more who thinks it's the old Polish team and clicks the bloody link. Like, that's the world we're in. So, unfortunately, I actually feel like, through actually no fault of their own, they're also staring down the barrel of the worst major ever.
if you want just, Monty, a little bit of a barometer, what I did for my sort of assessment, the pre-assessment preview of the major, I went and looked at the organizations and sort of to get an idea of how big their fan bases were, these underdogs that had qualified. I sort of looked at their Twitter followers. So I'll go through in just order for them. The Mongols, formerly IHC, 1,756 Twitter followers. Okay. Next up, gets bigger now. Monty, new Ukrainian organization, 5,600 followers on Twitter. So, you know, they're going to bring a lot of fans to the broadcast.
The joke is, if you go to Twitter and type in Monty, it's going to bring up fucking MonteCristo first. You're not even going to get to their blog.
But, so, Fluxor, and you would be like, well, they're Brazilian. They got loads, right? They must have loads because Pain aren't a great team. 600,000. They're a legendary organization. A lot of fans, you know. Just, you know, probably in CS, but other games too, you know. Anyway, Fluxor, 7,654 followers. Then we jump up. Greyhound, everyone's favorite. You know, yeah, the boys doing it for Oceania. 10,600 followers. Apex, match that, 10,600 followers. Gamer Legion, 20,700 followers. Into the Breach, Duncan's favorite, 13,100 followers. 9ein from Poland, 31,900 followers. And Bad News Eagles, who I'm told James Banks is going to blow into the stratosphere and make them the biggest org of all time, 35,400 followers. Now, if you combine all of that, you don't even have the reach of one fucking influencer. So, you know, there's like a real risk. Yeah, me. You know, it's like, there's a real risk that the viewership for this could be in the toilet, and I understand.
Well, I mean, look at the viewership for the last major because of the upsets. Like, people are always pretending that they want.
Yeah, no one follows these teams.
It's like, that's
the problem.
Remember the viewership for the last major finals when the upsets happened? You guys say you're like, oh yeah, underdog stories. Here's the truth, guys. Everyone hates an underdog story. You say you like them, but you don't watch the final when the underdogs win.
And then you get to thinking like, oh yeah, that's why Jake Lucky's there. Like, I'm almost half joking. Like, it's you know, like, we got to find some way to bring in some fans, and obviously no one in CS:GO would ever support CS:GO broadcast talent unless they're fucking, you know, the type that pander to them, which is a handful of them, you know. So it's like, well, we got to go somewhere. And yeah, I've said, and I said on my stream, and I want to fast forward 5 years to just a dark future. And this is Blast that will probably have been the progenitors of this. I want you to imagine there is a world where basically it could even be AI in 5 years, but you have like generic commentator 1, generic commentator 2. They never appear on camera. They're just two voices that commentate the games really well with some associated names who are just happy to do it. And then you cut away to an analysis desk, which is Tarek, Tim the Tapman, Dr. Disrespect, like, you know what I mean? Just a bunch of influencers, like, with big followings, all talking about what they saw, to no particular degree of competence or insight or interest. And everybody claps and we all break viewership records. If you think influencer esports isn't coming, it's coming. And it starts like this.
To add to this, like, the quality of CS, like, you could be saved by disaster, like, you know, major. You could be saved by great games, but who's gonna play them? Which teams? Like, the reason I told you, like, why this major sucks in terms of, are you like cheering for any team? Are you excited about any team on this major? Just besides, like, for example, me, I'm like, okay, I'm looking at G2 because I have friends there, probably Ants as well, like, because I have friends there. But outside of that, like, who are we excited about on this event? What are we excited about? We are excited about
storylines are garbage as well, right?
Who?
I'm saying the storylines are garbage.
Yeah, just there is no storylines. There is no one that you can say, like, oh, you remember in the past, you have Astralis, like the strongest team. Liquid, you know, you expecting the final between them and Astralis, like and they lose to Ants and whatever, right? And there's like this massive storylines. What's happening now? I'm not really cheering for anyone. Like, that can be at the level of Counter-Strike is just terrible. That's an old subject, Richard, but it is. Yeah. And
it is.
Coaching is the worst that I have seen in the last 5 years. I can rant about that for the next 25 minutes, but I won't. And there is nothing for me to be, excited about.
Yeah, my joke is
that it's the last one, and we go into the new game.
My joke sad was you may as well call this Major Sweet Major because it just feels like one of them online cups when you look at the teams, like a home sweet home, a snow sweet snow. It's like, even in the first round of games, you usually get a fucking like epic sort of storyline, a clash, because the RMRs are so fucked. You fully expect that you're going to get like two good teams going up against each other, or some fierce rivalry, or someone that stopped somebody else qualifying for another tournament, or they met each other in the final at Cologne and it's a run back in the first round of the major. Holy shit. None of that here. You have, RFA's going to stumble against Monty in the opening game. All right. Brazilian derby, pain fluxo. Game of Legion, complexity. Forza Ground. Who gives a shit? Apex Liquid. Think they played each other in an online cup. Maybe Apex won one time in the distant past. I can't fucking remember. NIP versus Mouse. That used to matter. Doesn't now. They're both shadows of themselves. And OG versus Ents. And to not be derisory, that's probably the most interesting matchup. But I don't even think it's going to be the real OG team. Because do they have to play with Nico at this event? Yeah. I think they do.
I think so, yes.
So we got, once again, this stand-in culture that everyone's been ignoring is going to bleed into the major. So look, after banging on Blast and their lack of attention to detail and all this, I will say them having to use Valve's RMR qualifier format that does 6 months old out-of-date seedings, best of ones, all sorts of nonsense in the current landscape, and then having to try and run a major where you want to break records. I do feel sorry for them in that regard, because the game's absolutely not going to bail them out. The viewership's going to be atrocious, would be my prediction, and there's a chance that it isn't even going to pick up for the Legends stage.
What
this major is going to stink, and not just because it's in France.
Jesus.
I didn't even say that was about the French. Just if you're in France, it stinks.
You know what storyline can help them?
French.
If Nico wins it, if Nico wins it or Zybo wins it, like that.
No, listen, that'd be good. But I will say, Kassad, to be fair though, this is when I'm not even just joking here. The worst thing is, imagine being Nico and you actually finally do win. By the way, some little cunt like me could just go, "Yeah, the worst major ever." Sound. I worked my whole life for this, by the way. It's supposed to be my crowning moment, like Olympic gold medal, like worst one ever though, wasn't it? With no good teams. Who did he play in the quarters into the breach? You know what I mean? Yeah. What's that?
Yeah.
It's bullshit, isn't it?
Yeah, it's a really terrible send off to the game, and we've had the thing that really frustrates me is we've had so many lessons in terms of like where we're, what to do, what not to do, how to do it right, formats that are problematic, formats that aren't, it's like. And we just don't apply anything anymore. Like it used to be a point of pride in the glory days of CS between 2016 and 2018. It was a point of pride that when we identified problems like conflict of interest or formats that didn't work or people trying to make shadowy franchise leagues like ESL did in the Twitch offices that one time that I exposed, we all came together as a community. We said, no, we're not going to allow that. And actually, even the teams and the orgs and the players were all aligned about what was good for our game and what we were gonna stand for, what we were gonna allow, what was gonna make for good tournaments. We just ain't like that anymore. It's like people are just eking through CS, just playing bad games badly against opponents that, whatever. It's just like become insipid by comparison to what it used to be. And it's because no one's applying any practical standards to what they're doing from the top down, from TOs all the way through to individual players, to the fans, to some broadcast talent, I'll add. It fucking sucks right now. Like this era of CS makes me so sad. Like having seen it all, it's like it's really, really bad, guys. And unfortunately, I think the major is going to be, the embodiment of all the problems we've ignored for the past 2-3 years.
I'll give you the framing that kills this major dead and the current landscape of Counter-Strike tournaments and the circuit that we have because of Valve. The first Counter-Strike major in DreamHack 2013, in November of 2013, which was at a small venue in the sense that it was just like a big LAN party, but it was the biggest LAN party in the world, DreamHack. It was essentially like a gaming festival, wasn't even a proper stadium or anything. That major began Counter-Strike as a true tier 1 esport. Before that, it was a semi-joke. ESL famously, with the next major, it wasn't ESL 1, it wasn't IEM, it was their inferior ESL major brand, the one that used to have fucking shit like Source on back in the day and games they didn't give a fuck about. It was on the little bitch table, the little kids table one, like the brand they didn't care about.
Remember Carmack making a statement about why it was on there as well, sort of justifying it, just like it wasn't big enough, it couldn't be warranted, that sort of stuff.
So to have this major was like, finally, we're in the big leagues. And as a result, everyone wanted to do a CSGO major because that's when you really make your name in esports, right? It is now so bad with the formats for these events and how they run them that I have a line I've been saying on By the Numbers for the last year, but I think everyone would agree with me. Because Cologne and Katowice are amazing events when ESL runs them as non-majors, I actually hope they never become majors, because if you make Cologne a major, it will have to use this shit qualification system and format and just be a worse version of if the event wasn't a major. Think about that. The same event, if it's not the World Championship and the biggest tournament, it will be better. Something's gone really wrong with that picture. I mean, something's gone really wrong.
What's wild to me is that the RMR system was invented because of the pandemic to solve a problem about, the major what being canceled, right? So you didn't have an actual a traditional qualification system. Isn't that right?
Yeah.
Yeah, it was.
And so why are we still using it?
Oh, the dumbest thing as well, Monty, is we actually had a better qualification system before the online era. What we had was, I always used to say, I actually think it's the coolest qualifier ever. Because on the one hand, you did have the thing like Worlds, Monty, where in theory, any region could qualify, but you don't just let them in the main event and ruin the event with small games. Yeah. What you did was, all the minors, with all the qualifiers, qualified into what is now week 1 of the major, but it was called the LAN qualifier. And famously, there are 2 very famous incidents that prove what an amazing system it was. And that is that Sponges Vox Eminor from Australia, that no one knew or gave a fuck about outside of Australia, and fucking Fallen's Luminosity Gaming / Kaboom at the time, who also were not anyone big yet. This is a year or so before they won. They were nobodies, and if they'd have gone like this, Monty, through an RMR and qualified from Asia and the Americas, people like me would say, this is shit. MSL's Dignitas would have beaten you, or Fateshes at the time, or whatever. Or, this French team would have, essentially, European bias would be, you wouldn't have beaten those teams. But because they played those teams at that qualifier and beat them, instead, we were like, actually, I'm hyped to see this Australian team. I want to see this fucking South American team. Maybe they can do something. And it actually justified them being in the tournament. Whereas there's the other thing that sucks if you like into the breach type team. Not maybe them as much, especially the teams from the other regions like the Americas. People can actually just be like, I don't even want you to be here. This sucks. And you can't say, but are you in my way there? Like, if you're Cloud9, you had to play some of the top 10 teams in the world in your best of 3s. You didn't, so you couldn't qualify. Who the fuck did the Mongols play? Can anyone even name the teams? What is this system? So yeah, the problem, Monty, is we've actually regressed with the majors.
Yeah, but that's what I'm saying is, like, the RMR system was designed to solve a problem of a canceled major, and there not being the normal qualification procedures. So you had to have these kind of more complex qualifiers as a result, because you hadn't had a LAN in a long time, right? And so I'm just confused as to why they still exist.
I assume something is going to change with the next one in March next year, right? It has to change because it's going to be a different landscape. You don't even know what's going to happen with the teams coming up after like the summer break, and when teams start going into the CS2. We don't even know the dates of the CS2. It's going to be announced and which tournaments are going to be played. So I assume the whole system will change. But the thing is, like, I was going to go back why it all came to shit. I think I said this like 5 years ago. On every important spot, on every organization or TO, we have so many incompetent people, so many unexperienced, uneducated, incompetent people who are making decisions they should have no business making. I know I'm beating a dead horse here, but the thing is, like, just take an example of AEG and GamerDoc and Nicole and all these things. They ruined one of the greatest organizations in esports.
Yep.
They just ruined it. Now everyone talks about them like they are just a pile of garbage. Yep. Nobody says a single positive thing about EG in the last You know, the reason why I went into war against them personally is because I didn't want to allow them to treat people like they do.
Yeah.
Like usually I wouldn't give a fuck, but whatever interview you don't go through, you don't get the job, doesn't really matter, right? But the way they treat people is just something that, you know, should not be acceptable in our industry whatsoever. Like they ruined, you know, because they're incompetent, and the way they're communicating, that's another thing. We spoke about the communication, the way they're communicating with the fan base, with the people who actually got them where they are, you know, all these like fans of the army.
They're disdainful. They're disdainful of the fans.
Terrible. And instead of admitting whatever the fuck that this season, just stepping off and trying to like recover the name and the brand, if it's even possible, they just keep pushing and making it even worse. There is a little more stories that I found out the last few days about the shit that was going on, even with the League of Legends team, and it's even worse than it was before. Like it's just, you know, that's one of the examples. You have NIP as well. Like NIP, what they did with device and like not communicating. They have an army of fans. They're one of the most, you know, recognizable names in CS:GO because of the start and the 86-0, and they get the device, the legendary player. He goes into this dark mode, like super like silent. They don't communicate anything. They have the like all these other things. It's just bunch of incompetent people running the show, making decisions.
It's all over the place.
It's everywhere. Just name it, you know. And you have an organization like Ants that doesn't have so much resources, but they are doing the things the right way. They build a team after the first one disbanded. They just got rid of it. We had our success. We made our name. We got our sponsors. Now we're gonna build from zero. They got Snappy, probably one of the best IGLs right now. I mean, top 5, I guess. Simply because, you know, there is not many to choose from right now, but he is still there. And they did, you know, they created a new team. That's like a model that you should be doing. And also, like I said, the coaching right now, the coaches are not even getting the proper like tools, the proper staff around them, the proper system around them. It's just a mess. It's because of those people like GamerDoc, like Nicole, like all these like, you know, owners and like
I'll add there is a difference. For me, like when outsiders come in and they're not from esports and they acquire esports properties and then run them into the ground, at least they never really cared to begin with. They were here based on a buzzword. They were here based on a deck that they saw in a pitch meeting. Yeah, they're tourists. It's like, I don't know. Like, I don't really know about cars. I borrow my friend's sports car.
They're really obnoxious tourists, though. Is the problem.
Yeah, of course, yeah. You know, when I ride the fucking tits off it and give it back with all scuffed scratches on the paint and 10,000 miles on the clock. That's what they do every time. What I find really egregious, though, is the slow poison in this industry that takes OG esports people and turns them into nickel and dimers, people who aren't focused on people who aren't even focused on excellence, people who aren't focused on the esports no more, people who aren't focused on the community roots anymore, and they just become like another suit. They behave corporate without any of the corporate competencies. And so you end up with this world. I mean, that's what happened with the likes of NIP. I mean, people just seem to have forgot. NIP literally just said, like, you know those stickers, that capsule for the cancelled LAN during COVID? Valve definitely meant us to have that money and not the players to get any share of it, even though in their contracts the players are entitled to a share of sticker sales. But and Valve have never said that. It's, you know, and everyone's just let it slide, man. Everyone lets it slide. And like, I'll tie it back in so we can do our outro. You know, that's the problem. Blast right now are in that moment where you can either like redouble your efforts and yeah, listen, you might snap out of existence. Like, real talk, you might. You might go under, and we might only be left with ESL. That's the future that they want, right? That's what
I don't want Blast to die.
I don't either.
You know what I mean?
But I don't want Blast to become what they are rapidly becoming, because that helps nobody. I don't want dog shit qualifiers that are run with just a raft of competitive integrity issues, because that'll do.
And I don't want them being so desperate. Like I said, today, May 7th, was the end of the Copenhagen Rainbow Six major that Blast was operating. They are operating a CS major tomorrow in an entirely different country. You are not going to convince me that Blast has the staff to pull this off seamlessly. That seems really unlikely.
Famously, PGL didn't, and PGL's got probably way more experience running massive stadium events and all that shit. So yeah, I think there's no chance, mate.
I would rather take PGL than Blast any day of the week. The thing is, like,
oh, there's a fucking statement enough.
the thing is, like, you say, like, you don't want. For all I care, they can eat shit and die.
Now you know why we got Kassad on this show, everyone.
That's why they made their bed. They made their bed. Let them fucking sleep and die in it. Right.
Look, man, they didn't make their bed. Like,
yes,
Valve, they made part of it. But I think Blast dying would be a shame because I really think they offer a good product and I like their creative design. And I think that they've really pushed ESL to be better, to be a better broadcast.
Sure.
Like, I think there's a lot of positives to Blast. I think it's good to have multiple independent tournament operators. I think, like, the takeaway here is that, for me at least, is that there are certain things that Blast could have done a lot better, such as the kind of disastrous RMRs, and we're still waiting on the major. The stupid pissing contest about talent that makes the last CSGO major feel really bad. Honestly, it doesn't feel like a celebration of CSGO. It seems like another, battle in an ongoing war between Blast and ESL, in which the fans don't give a shit about and the fans lose. And to me, that's a bummer. But I also think that they're not responsible for the RMR system. That's Valve. It sucks that they've got the format that they have, but they may have felt obligated to do that. And it was approved by Valve because of monetary reasons. Like, they are in a they were in a hard business position before we had this potential recession / existing recession. And I think now they're in an even harder position. And they're going up against a company in ESL that seems like they're almost impossible to defeat at this point in time.
Is it so bad if they don't defeat them? Is it so bad? Because there's going to be another Blast. There's going to be somebody else. The thing is, like, Blast
No. That's
didn't
the
push
old thinking, Kassad. That was when the VC money was here. The reality is there may not be another Blast now.
Well, I mean, there is a new game that's not going anywhere. There is going to be a new Blast. The thing is, like, it doesn't matter, like, what their name is. The problem also that I have with what you said is, like, I don't think Blast pushed ESL to be better. I think E-League did. I think E-League is the one that pushed ESL to the very next level. Before E-League,
we 100% did. I mean, they even told us as much.
It's absolutely 100% true. Before the E-League came up with credit cards, with the practice rooms, with like all these things, like, in the studio, like all these like little comforts and like, raising it up to the next level, ESL was nowhere to be seen. They had these events and they were like right there. But the thing is, like, I don't care. Like, if somebody treats this treats this last major event and doesn't care about the fans, doesn't care about the broadcast, they want to introduce their political side of the things and not make the decision that's best for the fans, best for the game, best for the fucking major, they can eat shit and die. That's for all I care. Like, that's how I see it. Because if they survive today and this challenge they have, if you say you want them to survive, if they survive today, what do I expect from them tomorrow?
I think that's
what is the next step. What is the next step?
I think that's Richard's point, that they're becoming something like that is not very good.
Yeah. All I would say is this. My final thoughts is just this. One, by the way, this is now so fucked up that there are talent who boycotted the event and publicly pressured them not to take the money that would have given them a chance to compete with ESL on an even footing, but then worked for ESL, who are owned by the same people. You literally do not have principles, and you owe Blast a public apology for what you have done. And then secondly, I would just say this. I just actually hope that, like, essentially we can just have good Counter-Strike in CS2. So as sad as it is, like, I do think, unfortunately, this has ended in such a whack way. And my final note would just be this for Blast. Blast tried to play the same game face it did, and Richard knows all about this, which is when ESL is the evil empire, they pretend they're the fucking Rebel Alliance, and they're part of A New Hope, and me and Richard are like fucking Chewbacca and Han Solo or whatever, and then they're like, it's all right, we're going to back you up though, we're coming in. But the joke is, they're Lando Calrissian, and there is no Return of the Jedi. They just sold us out to the Vader and the fucking Empire, and the second they get a chance to have power, they are that, as Richard pointed out earlier, worse than ESL. Even ESL can cross party lines, can say, you know what, Thorin? Yeah, we did have that incident in what is now our sort of home base, but actually we sort of think you're a top talent, so can you come back and work the Cologne event? Even ESL would do that. But in the end, Blast became not only everything they fought against, but worse.
All right. And with that, guys, remember that we at Last Free Nation are doing watch parties for the major on our Twitch channel. So follow it if you're watching on Twitch right now. The link is below also. So we will be doing watch parties. You can come along and have some fun on a laid back experience with all of the matches of the Blast Major. With probably many of the people who probably should have been invited to a certain degree, as we complained about earlier, as a send-off for CSGO. So you get that advantage too, the OGs coming on. But as usual, guys, this has been another episode of the Four Horsemen. And as we always end it, Esports Delenda Est.